Chapter 1353. In the meeting hall of the 100 Beast tribe, the sovereigns of the Heaven Suppression Army and the sovereigns of the Northern Plains took their seats. Lu Ming and Xiao Wan sat at the top. The hall was silent. Everyone looked at each other, but no one made a sound. What should we do next? Xia Jiuyang was the first to speak, breaking the silence. What should they do? Many thoughts flashed through everyone's mind. Now that the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace had been destroyed and the Xia clan had suffered heavy losses, they had sealed themselves in the palace for 10,000 years. Aside from the western desert, the vast divine desolate continent was now ownerless. So, what should they do next? In other words, how should they distribute it? Everyone wanted the boundless resources in this boundless territory. On the smaller side, there were some overlord factions present, such as the World Academy, the Floating Mountain Sect, and others. How should these factions distribute their territories? On the larger side, it was the Heaven Suppression Army and the Northern Plains factions. How should these two factions get along and distribute their territories? In fact, there were also Lu Ming and Xiao Wan's factions in the Northern Plains. However, they were only in an alliance. Everyone fell silent again, especially the Heaven Suppression Army. This was an important problem. If it was not solved properly, it might lead to another huge battle. However, how could the Heaven Suppression Army be a match for Lu Ming and the others? If they fought, they would be destroyed. Hence, the experts of the Heaven Suppression Army felt the most complicated. They found it difficult to speak. A mountain could not accommodate two tigers. Would Lu Ming and Xiao Wan attack them next? They were not confident. Why don't we form an alliance? After a long while, Xiao Wan spoke. An alliance? Many people's hearts trembled as they began to ponder. If we form an alliance, all the factions will form one faction. Then, the entire divine desolate continent will be under our control. Why should we worry about territory and territory? Xiao Wan smiled. I agree. I agree too. At first, it was Chu Luo, Mo Yi, and the others. Then, Xia Jiuyang, the barbarian emperor, Yuexin martial monarch, and the others spoke one after another, expressing their agreement. Haha, Sovereign Wan Tian's suggestion is good. I agree too. The old general of the Heaven Suppression Army laughed and expressed his thoughts. In the end, everyone looked at Lu Ming. Lu Ming still hadn't said anything. I have no objections either. Lu Ming smiled. All right, it's settled then. Xiao Wan smiled. Since it's an alliance, there must be an alliance leader. Who will be the alliance leader? All of a sudden, a ruler spoke. The scene fell silent again. Who would be the leader? To form an alliance and form a force, there was no doubt that the leader of the alliance would be the master of the force. He would also be the master of the divine wilderness, the ruler of the world. Everyone couldn't help but look at the old general, Xiao Wan, and Lu Ming. Only these three people were qualified to do so. Of course it's Lu Ming. Lu Ming is so young and his battle prowess is unparalleled. There has never been such a person since the divine desolate era. Other than him, who else could it be? Xia Jiuyang spoke first, recommending Lu Ming. That's right. If it wasn't for Lu Ming, how could we have ended up like this? In that case, we would be the ones who would die. Lu Ming turned the tide and turned the situation around. I also recommend Lu Ming to be the leader. One of the deans of the World Academy spoke. I also recommend Lu Ming. Me too. Following this, the other deans of the World Academy, the Barbaric Emperor and Yuexian Martial Emperor recommended Lu Ming. Behind Lu Ming, the auras of the Heaven Suppression Divine Ape and Tu Qian went without saying. Everyone was stunned. Unknowingly, Lu Ming's force and strength had become so shocking. Lu Ming picked up a cup and drank slowly without saying a word. No one knew what he was thinking. The eyes of the martial emperors of the Heaven Suppression Army, Mo Yi, Chu Luo, and the others flickered as if they were planning something. Haha, not bad. I also recommend Lu Ming to be the alliance leader. Xiao Wan laughed and expressed his thoughts. The moment Xiao Wan spoke, Mo Yi, Chu Luo and the others also spoke to support Lu Ming. In the end, only the Heaven Suppression Divine Army was left. The emperors of the Heaven Suppression Divine Army sighed in their hearts. They knew that they were weak and couldn't compete with Lu Ming. Now that Ciel Wan supported Lu Ming, how could they say no? Old General, what do you think? Ciel Wan looked at the old general with a faint smile. Little brother Lu Ming's talent is unprecedented. He has contributed the most this time. It is the blessing of the Divine Wilderness Continent that Lu Ming is the alliance leader. I have no objections. The old general also spoke. The old general spoke. The 100 Battles Martial Emperor and the others also recommended Lu Ming. All right, then it's decided. This subordinate pays his respects to the alliance leader. Ciel Wan suddenly stood up from his seat and walked down to bow to Lu Ming. This subordinate pays his respects to the alliance leader. Xia Zhuoyang, the barbaric emperor, and the others followed closely behind Ciel Wan and bowed to Lu Ming. Following that, Chu Luo and the others also bowed to Lu Ming. Finally, it was the Heaven Suppression Divine Army and the others. All right, since the army recommends me so much, I, Lu Ming, will not decline. Lu Ming stood up and accepted the position of alliance leader. He didn't decline, nor did he need to. He needed this identity to better protect his family and friends. Alliance leader, since we are going to form an alliance, what should we name it? Someone suggested. The alliance leader has awakened the 9 dragons bloodline and is famous in the world. In my opinion, why don't we call ourselves the Dragon Alliance? Xia Zhuoyang pondered for a moment and said, Dragon Alliance? I think it's fine. It's concise and domineering, Ciel Wan said. All right, then we'll call ourselves the Dragon Alliance. In the end, Lu Ming made the decision. Now that the name was decided, the problem was, where would the Dragon Alliance's headquarters be? It couldn't be in the sacred city, right? Eastern Wilderness, Northern Plains, and Southern Underworld weren't good. The Dragon Alliance had to conquer the world and unify the Divine Wilderness. Its headquarters had to be in the Central Continent. Only then could it look down on the world. In the end, everyone discussed. Since the Dragon Alliance was building a new headquarters, it would be best to build one as well. After the discussion, everyone chose disciples in the vast land of the Central Continent. In the end, everyone decided to build the Dragon Alliance's headquarters on Dragon Leaping Mountain, about 150 million kilometers east of the sacred city. It would be called Dragon Emperor City. After the headquarters decided on the alliance leader's name, they started to choose the important core members. In the end, Ciel Wan and the Heaven Suppression Divine Army's old general would be the Dragon Alliance's deputy alliance leader. The other emperors would be the Dragon Alliance's protectors. Every protector had the power to control a territory. After the core members were decided, it was time to assign tasks. There were 2 main aspects to the current mission. First, they had to deploy manpower to build Dragon Emperor City. Second, they had to send an army to unify the Divine Wilderness Continent. The Xia clan had sealed itself, and the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace had been destroyed. Almost all the overlord factions with emperors in the Divine Wilderness Continent were members of the Dragon Alliance. However, there were countless factions of various sizes below the overlord factions. Chapter 1354. On the second day, when the news spread, the entire Dragon Alliance cheered. The war was over, and the Dragon Alliance ruled the world. The huge Dragon Alliance started to operate. The original major forces sent people to Dragon Leap Mountain to build the Dragon Emperor City. A portion of them sent an army to conquer the world. A few days later, the news of the Battle of Holy City spread across the world. The Divine Wilderness experienced a magnitude 10 earthquake. Countless cultivators and forces were shocked. A few days later, the Dragon Alliance was established, and Lu Ming was the alliance leader. The news spread across the Divine Wilderness through voice transmission jade talismans. Countless forces, big and small, surrendered and expressed their willingness to join the Dragon Alliance. Now that the Xia family had sealed the palace for 10,000 years and the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace was destroyed, the Dragon Alliance was truly invincible. No force dared to resist. Then, the Dragon Alliance split into 3 groups. The old general led an army to sweep across the middle continent. CL1 led an army to attack the southern underworld. As for Lu Ming, he personally led the army to the eastern wilderness. There was no suspense. The major and minor forces of the middle continent surrendered. When CL1 attacked the southern underworld, he was only met with some resistance. Those who resisted were easily killed by CL1, and the rest surrendered. Half a month after the Battle of Holy City, Lu Ming led his people back to Yinyang Mountain. Yinyang Mountain is finally reclaimed! Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others stood in the sky, looking at the vast land of Yinyang Mountain. When Yinyang Mountain was attacked by Di and they were captured, they thought that they would never be able to reclaim Yinyang Mountain. They did not expect that they would be able to reclaim Yinyang Mountain in just a few months. Zongzi, no, Alliance leader! Bai Shijin and the others looked at Lu Ming with complicated expressions. They did not know how to address him. Senior, since I am Master Lian Sung's disciple, I am the Zongzi of the Talisman Puppet Sect. You can call me Zongzi in private, Lu Ming said. Yes, Zongzi. Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others were overjoyed. Lu Ming was now the alliance leader of the Dragon Alliance. They were afraid that Lu Ming would look down on the Talisman Puppet Sect. But now, it seemed like Lu Ming did not forget his roots. There were many experts in the Dragon Alliance. On the other hand, the Talisman Puppet Sect still didn't have a ruler. They were afraid that the Talisman Puppet Sect wouldn't be able to compete with the other powerhouses in the Dragon Alliance. The other forces wouldn't be able to distribute enough resources and would decline. But now, they did not have to worry. Lu Ming, the alliance leader, was the Zongzi of the Talisman Puppet Sect. The Talisman Puppet Sect had an extraordinary status in the Dragon Alliance. They did not have to worry about not having an emperor to hold the fort, and not being able to obtain resources. Senior Bai, Senior Du, in the future, both of you will lead the original disciples of the Talisman Puppet Sect to oversee the Yinyang Mountain. Yes, Zongzi. Bai Shijin and Du Songjue complied. As for the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron, it flew back to the Nine-Dragon City after the battle in the Holy City to suppress the Nine-Dragon veins. Out of Lu Ming's expectation, they did not encounter any resistance when they arrived at the Nine-Dragon City. The big and small forces in the Nine-Dragon City had already opened their gates. When Lu Ming's army arrived, the forces in the Nine-Dragon City knelt down and surrendered to Lu Ming. Greetings, Alliance Leader of the Dragon Alliance. We are willing to submit to the Dragon Alliance and serve the Alliance Leader. 5 or 6 Supreme Beings stood at the front and bowed respectfully. Hee, old acquaintances. Lu Ming stood in the air and looked down at the 6 Supreme Beings. Among the 6 Supreme Martial Artists, 3 of them were Lu Ming's old acquaintances. They were the remaining 3 family heads of the 6 ancient families, the Dongfang family head, the Kong family head, and the Nangong family head. The 3 patriarchs broke out in a cold sweat when Lu Ming glanced at them. Alliance Master, we were blind in the past and offended you. From now on, we will definitely be at your beck and call and do our best, the Dongfang clan patriarch said with a face full of cold sweat. The pressure emitted by Lu Ming made it difficult for him to breathe. They knew that if Lu Ming gave the order now, not only them, but also their families would not be spared. In the crowd behind, many of the geniuses who had fought with Lu Ming before, or even competed with him, knelt on the ground with complicated feelings. For example, Dongfang Yu and the others. A few years ago, Lu Ming was still competing with them. However, a few years later, Lu Ming was already standing at the pinnacle of the divine wilderness mainland. He reigned supreme in the world. There was really no comparison. Hee! Lu Ming chuckled. The Dongfang clan patriarch and the others trembled in fear. They did not understand what Lu Ming was thinking. Would he kill them? This kind of waiting was incomparably torturous. After a long while, Lu Ming said faintly, Well, I allow you to surrender, but all your forces will be moved out of Nine-Dragon City to the northern plains. Do you have any objections? No objections. Thank you for your kindness, Alliance leader. This subordinate is grateful. The Dongfang clan patriarch and the others breathed a sigh of relief and thanked him repeatedly. To them, although Nine Dragons City was their foundation and they had developed here for nearly 10,000 years, it would be a pity to move away just like that. However, compared to the calamity of extermination, it was much better. Naturally, they didn't dare to say half a word. Soon after, the powerful forces in Nine Dragons City began to take the cross-territory teleportation formation to the northern plains. There were naturally people in the northern plains to arrange for them. As for the smaller forces in Nine Dragons City, there was no need for them to stay. They could not make any waves even if they stayed. After that, Lu Ming left Xia Jiuyang, Yan Quangtu, and the others to deal with Nine Dragons City, the original Heavenly Corpse sect, and the Myriad Demon Valley. Lu Ming flew towards the east alone. Soon after, Lu Ming entered the Tianxian region. However, Lu Ming did not go to the Tianxian branch palace immediately. The first place he went to was the 100 Deities Slope. The battle of the Holy City had spread across the entire Divine Wilderness continent, including the Tianxian region. Some of the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace's branch palaces were in chaos. Without any control, there were all kinds of fights over the treasures of the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace. Some of the branch palaces were restrained and were waiting for news. They knew that if the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace was destroyed, there would definitely be a powerful force taking over the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace's territory. There would definitely be someone to take over them. The Tianxian branch palace was not in chaos. In a courtyard in the center of Tianxian City, a few people were drinking tea and discussing matters. The leader was the palace master of the Tianxian branch palace, Mu Tian. Beside him were Mu Yi and Mu Jing. Who would have thought that the vast Emperor Heaven Divine Palace that had been passed down for 10,000 years would fall just like that? Mu Yi drank a cup of wine and sighed. A few days ago, when they received the news, they were shocked and could not believe it. The Emperor Heaven Divine Palace was such a colossus. How could it fall just like that? The path of martial arts is filled with danger. Even an Emperor Realm cultivator might fall if they are not careful. Mu Jing also sighed. It is said that more than 20 emperors fell in this battle, Mu Tian said, his voice slightly interfering. Chapter 1355. Sovereigns were like gods in their eyes. They ruled over the world and were invincible. With a wave of their hands, they could destroy the heavens and the earth. With a thought, they could kill billions of people. They would never see such people in their lives. However, more than 20 of them had died in a battle. It was hard for them to imagine. The one behind all of this is Lu Ming. Mu Tian suddenly let out another sigh. Mu Yi and Mu Jing fell silent. Brother, is the Lu Ming you're talking about the Lu Ming who walked out of our place? Mu Yi asked after pondering for a while. His eyes were filled with disbelief. It was said that the one who dominated the battle was a young genius called Lu Ming. He had killed more than 10 sovereigns and was terrifyingly powerful. That young man was called Lu Ming. After the battle, almost all the sovereigns and powerful forces in the Divine Wilderness continent formed an alliance called the Dragon Alliance. The leader of the Dragon Alliance was Lu Ming. I'm not sure. We are in the borderlands. The news I received was not very detailed. I only know that Lu Ming came from the Eastern Wilderness, Mu Tian said. His eyes were filled with anticipation. Came from the Eastern Wilderness? Could it be the same person? Mu Yi and Mu Jing let out a long breath. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, a violent explosion sounded outside Tianxian City. What's going on? Mu Tian stood up abruptly. His voice could be heard from afar. Whoosh! A figure appeared and quickly reported. Palace Master, something bad has happened. The Palace Master of the Black Knife Region's Emperor Heaven Divine Palace has led his men to invade. What? Black Knife Region? Mu Tian's face changed drastically. Damn it! The Black Knife Region is taking advantage of the situation. Mu Jing shouted angrily. When the news of the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace's destruction spread, the subordinate palaces were in chaos. Some of the subordinate palaces snatched the treasures that belonged to the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace, and some even snatched the treasures of other subordinate palaces. The palace master of the Black Knife region's subordinate palace was the same. He brought his men to plunder everywhere. Since the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace had been destroyed, no one cared. These people wanted to plunder a batch of treasures and then go far away to hide and cultivate. Whoosh! 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 One by one, figures rushed into Tianxian City as powerful auras filled the air. Men, meet the enemy! Mu Tian shouted and soared into the sky. Mu Yi and Mu Jing followed closely behind. At the same time, figures flew out from all over Tianxian City to join Mu Tian and the others. As soon as they met up, a group of people flew over from the front. They were all dressed in black robes and carried black sabers on their backs. The leader of the group had a fierce-looking face and a long beard. He was tall and sturdy. "Daoheng, what are you doing?" Mu Tian roared. "Haha, what are you trying to do? It's very simple. Hand over all the spiritual herbs, spiritual materials, and treasures in your profound Sky Branch Palace, and I'll spare your lives." The curly-bearded man, Daoheng, laughed out loud. "Don't even think about it. Daoheng, how dare you?" Although the Heavenly Emperor Divine Palace has been destroyed, the Dragon Alliance has been established and will rule over the world. They will definitely take over the original forces of the Heavenly Emperor Divine Palace. If you do this, you will be hunted down by the Dragon Alliance. Mu Tian roared. "Haha, what a joke. The Dragon Alliance is such a huge force. How can they notice our border wasteland so quickly? Even if they do, we are just small fries in their eyes. They won't pursue this matter. Cut the crap and hand over the treasures," Daoheng said ferociously. "Don't even think about it." Mu Tian's attitude was tough. "You're courting death. Kill!" Daoheng roared and took the lead to attack Mu Tian. The people he brought with him also charged towards Mu Yi and the others. Mu Tian released the aura of the third level of the spiritual sea realm. After all these years of cultivation, Mu Tian's cultivation had improved a little and reached the third level of the spiritual sea realm. Mu Yi and Mu Jing had also broken through their limits and entered the spiritual sea realm. They were both at the first level of the spiritual sea realm. In addition, there were 2 martial artists at the first level of the spiritual sea realm on Tianxian Branch Palace's side. However, the Black Knife region had more experts. There were 8 spiritual sea realm martial artists, and Daoheng's cultivation was also at the third level of the spiritual sea realm. For a moment, the Tianxian Branch Palace was at a disadvantage. Kill! Kill! The 2 sides fought fiercely. People were killed constantly, and their bodies fell in Tianxian City. However, although the Black Knife region had the upper hand, this was Tianxian City after all. The Tianxian Branch Palace had the home advantage and could use various formations to fight against the Black Knife region. Clang! 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 Mu Tian and Daoheng clashed continuously. After dozens of moves, there was no clear winner. Mu Tian, I didn't expect you to break through to the third level of the spiritual sea realm without anyone noticing. Daoheng's anxious voice was heard. In the past, the Black Knife region's strength was stronger than the Tianxian Branch Palace. Especially Daoheng, who was at the third level of the spiritual sea realm. Among the palace masters of the nearby big regions, he was considered strong. He didn't expect Mu Tian to reach the third level of the spiritual sea realm without anyone noticing and be able to fight against him. The battle was suddenly in a state of anxiety. As for Lu Ming, he went to Baishan Slope. The 100 Gods Slope was filled with gray fog. It was hazy, just like before. Lu Ming scanned with his spiritual sense and found that there was someone guarding outside the 100 Gods Slope. However, he was only a King Turk cultivator, which was far from Lu Ming's level. Lu Ming's figure moved and rushed into the 100 Gods Slope. The guards didn't notice him at all. As soon as he flew into the area filled with gray fog, Lu Ming felt a force acting on him, preventing him from flying. However, Lu Ming's current cultivation level was much stronger than it had been in the past. Lu Ming circulated his vital essence and counteracted this force. He continued to fly inside. The deeper he went, the stronger the force was. It was suppressing Lu Ming, wanting to completely suppress Lu Ming's cultivation. Back then, when Lu Ming came in, his cultivation was completely suppressed, and he became an ordinary person. What a strong force! Lu Ming could sense that the suppression from the outside world was no small matter. It was very shocking. Even with Lu Ming's cultivation, he felt like he was being suppressed. Moreover, the deeper he went, the stronger the suppression became. The intent here is also not simple. Lu Ming scanned the surroundings with his spiritual sense. Back then, when he came in, he was lucky and encountered wisps of intent of various attributes. He used them to comprehend and improve his intent. Those were left behind by the experts after they died. However, when Lu Ming looked at it now, he saw something different. The artistic conception that was floating between heaven and earth was indeed left behind by powerful cultivators after they died. However, Lu Ming could feel a terrifying oppression from them. Legend had it that the 100 Gods slope was formed countless years ago, when the sky split open and corpses fell down. Lu Ming estimated that those corpses were definitely above the Emperor realm. It was very likely that they were the corpses of saints. Therefore, even though so many years had passed, his cultivation had to be suppressed when he came in with his current realm. Primal chaos! With a thought, Lu Ming's primal chaos intent lingered around his body. As soon as the primal chaos intent was released, Lu Ming felt his body lighten. The pressure disappeared without a trace. The primal chaos intent is so mysterious. Chapter 1356. Since the chaotic concept could block the pressure from the outside, Lu Ming had nothing to worry about. His figure flashed and he turned into a beam of light, moving freely in the 100 Gods slope. The reason why he came to the 100 Gods slope was that he had obtained the lightning cauldron here. In addition, he had seen a round bead back then. There might be some good stuff in the 100 Gods slope. Therefore, Lu Ming came to check it out. However, after making a round, Lu Ming was disappointed. Other than the floating concept, Lu Ming did not find anything else, let alone any treasures. Lu Ming was a little disappointed. After all, the 100 Gods slope had been formed for too many years. Moreover, some treasures, such as sacred weapons, had intelligence and could fly away on their own. There might be some treasures in the 100 Gods slope's distant past. However, it had been too long. Some of them might have lost their intelligence and turned into dust. Some might have flown away on their own. Lu Ming was really lucky to have obtained the lightning cauldron last time. That is... Suddenly, Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He saw a strong wind blowing in front of him. In the wind, there was a round bead floating up and down. Outside the round bead, there was a small green bird flying around. It's that round bead! Lu Ming was overjoyed. He did not expect to see the round bead again. Swish! Lu Ming moved and pounced on the round bead. The small bird on the round bead seemed to be frightened. It chirped and flew into the round bead. The round bead flew away with a green light. Where are you going? Lu Ming executed the wind origin technique. His figure was like lightning, closing the distance between him and the round bead in an instant. The round bead was shocked again. With a shake, its speed increased greatly with a swish. It pulled away from Lu Ming. So fast? Lu Ming was shocked. Then, he was overjoyed. This round bead was extraordinary. Even if it was not as magical as the lightning cauldron, it was at least superior to a sovereign's spiritual weapon. Since Lu Ming had seen it, how could he return empty-handed? Lu Ming increased his speed and chased after the round bead. One chased while the other fled. They were like two bolts of lightning. In a short while, they had circled around the 100 Gods slope a few times. Whoosh! At this time, Lu Ming waved his hand and reached forward. A giant claw formed. It was 10 miles long and wide. It was wrapped in the chaos concept and grabbed at the bead. The large hand immediately enveloped the bead. The bead buzzed and rushed in a certain direction. However, when the bead came into contact with the concept of primal chaos, it suddenly stopped and did not continue to escape. Instead, it approached the concept of primal chaos and trembled slightly. Lu Ming felt that the round bead was clearly enjoying itself. Lu Ming sucked and grabbed the bead with his claws. Then, he wrapped the bead with the chaos concept. As expected, the chaos concept resonated with the bead, and a message appeared in Lu Ming's mind. Air frozen bead. This round bead was called air frozen bead. It was a wind attribute treasure. Whoosh! The air frozen bead vibrated and flew into Lu Ming's glabella. In his sea of consciousness, it stopped not far away from the lightning cauldron. Lu Ming's mind moved. A green energy rushed into Lu Ming's body from the air frozen bead. Lu Ming performed the wind element technique. With a step, his figure disappeared from the spot and reappeared 1,000 miles away. Such a fast speed! The wind energy of this round bead can greatly increase my speed when I perform the wind element technique. Lu Ming was overjoyed. An increase in speed meant that his life-saving ability would be stronger. Air frozen bead has surpassed an emperor's spiritual weapon. It must have other mysteries. I'll slowly study it in the future. Let's make a trip to Tianxian City first. Lu Ming smiled slightly. Then, he left the 100 Gods slope and headed toward Tianxian City. The great formation in Tianxian City was extremely fierce. There were casualties constantly. Even Mu Tian, Mu Yi, and Mu Jing were injured. Tianxian City suffered heavy losses. However, the Black Knife region also suffered heavy losses. Damn it! Dao Heng roared in his heart. He didn't expect Tianxian City to be so difficult to deal with. What a piece of trash! You can't even take down Tianxian City after so long! At this moment, a cold shout came from the sky. Boom! Then, a huge aura came down from the sky, causing Mu Tian and the others' faces to change drastically. 7th level of the spiritual sea realm! Mu Tian exclaimed and looked up. A figure wrapped in a black robe appeared in the sky. The shocking aura came from him. My lord, you're here! Seeing this person, Dao Heng was overjoyed. As for Mu Tian, Mu Jing, and the others, their hearts sank. Dao Heng addressed the other party as my lord. It was obvious that the other party was on Dao Heng's side. Who was it that Dao Heng addressed him as my lord? Could it be that one of the higher-ups of the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace was taking the opportunity to collect treasures? Various thoughts flashed through Mu Tian and Mu Zheng's minds. Leave this person to me. You deal with the others. End it quickly. The voice of the black-robed man was heard. A slender black sword appeared in his hand and he pierced it towards Mu Tian. The speed of this sword was shocking. Mu Tian's face changed drastically and he retreated quickly. However, his figure was not as fast as the other party's sword light. The other party was at the 7th level of the spiritual sea tier and was much stronger than him. Don't hurt my father! At this moment, a delicate shout came from Tianxian City. A fiery red sword light flew out and clashed with the black-robed man's sword light. Clang! The black-robed man's sword light was blocked, and the fiery red sword light was also sent flying. Swish! A figure rushed out from below and stood in front of Mu Tian. L'honneur! Mu Tian called out. Mulin's. The figure that appeared behind him was Mulin's. Mulin stood in the sky and released a powerful aura. She was also at the 7th level of the spiritual sea tier. Father, why didn't you call me? Mulin's asked. L'honneur, you were in seclusion previously, so I didn't call you, Mu Tian said. I didn't expect that there would be such a beautiful girl here. How lucky! The black-robed man's eyes roamed around Mulan's body, burning with passion. You're courting death! Mulin shouted coldly and charged towards the black-robed man with her sword in hand. The two fought together. For a moment, Mulin's had the upper hand. They exchanged more than a dozen moves in an instant, and the black-robed man was completely at a disadvantage. Although their cultivation was similar, Mulins's battle prowess was obviously above his. The more they fought, the more shocked the black-robed man was. "Six brother, you've seen enough. Why aren't you making a move? End the battle quickly, or else there will be changes." The black-robed man suddenly shouted towards the sky. "Hee hee!" A second black-robed man appeared behind a cloud in the sky. This black-robed man's aura was even more shocking, reaching the 8th level of the spiritual C tier. Mu Tian and the others' expressions changed drastically. The other party actually had so many experts. "This girl is mine!" The black-robed man that appeared behind glanced at Mulins with fiery eyes and said coldly, "Fine, she's yours then." The black-robed man in front gritted his teeth. "Shio!" The second black-robed man turned into a streak of black light and charged towards Mulins. Chapter 1357. "L'honneur!" Mu Tian shouted worriedly. However, Mulins and the two black-robed men had higher cultivation than him, and he could not interfere. "Mu Tian, you should worry about yourself!" Dao Heng sneered and charged towards Mu Tian. There was no suspense in today's battle. As long as the two black-robed men took down Mulins, it would be easy for them to deal with the rest. As the battle continued, the situation became more and more unfavorable for Tianxian City. Mulins slowly fell into a disadvantageous position. "Hee hee, this chick is really beautiful. I have lived for so many years, but I have never seen such an attractive lady." The second black-robed man sneered and attacked Mulins like a storm. Mulins was panting and sweating profusely. She could not hold on any longer. Boom! At this moment, there was a terrifying aura in the sky. This aura was like the ruler of the universe. It was vast and unfathomable, like the deep sea. A terrifying pressure instantly enveloped the entire Tianxian city. Ah! 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 Everyone from the Black Knife region, including Dao Heng and the two black-robed men, screamed as if they had been hit by a few hundred mountains. Blood spurted out of their mouths. However, the strange thing was that Mu Tian, Mulins and the rest of the people from Tianxian City were fine. That is... Everyone looked towards the sky and realized that there was a blurry figure in the sky far away. He was covered by a halo and looked like a god in the sky. "It's him!" Mulins's face changed and a complicated look flashed across her eyes. She then bit her lips and flew down, disappearing from Tianxian City. Who is that? He is so powerful! He is too powerful! Is he a god?" The martial artists in Tianxian City looked towards the sky and said in a daze. That aura made them look up and worship him. However, that aura appeared for a very short time. As soon as it appeared, it immediately retracted and disappeared. Then, the figure in the sky stepped down from the sky. Lu Ming, it's you?" Mu Tian exclaimed when he saw the figure. That's right, the figure that suddenly appeared was Lu Ming. Earlier, when he had just arrived in Tianxian City, he had discovered that there was a great battle going on in Tianxian City. In a fit of rage, he had unleashed his aura, injuring the black-robed man and the people from the Black Blade region. And this was him showing mercy. Otherwise, with the cultivation of the black-robed man and the others, Lu Ming's aura would have already turned them into ashes. Not even a speck of them would have remained. "Lu Ming, it's really you!" Mu Jing flew over when he saw Lu Ming. "What? Lu Ming, it's him! Lu Ming is back! Heavens, that terrifying aura was actually emitted by Lu Ming! What realm has Lu Ming reached?" The other people in Tianxian City exclaimed in disbelief when they saw Lu Ming. They found it hard to believe that the godlike aura just now was emitted by Lu Ming. "Senior!" Lu Ming cupped his fists at Mu Jing and Mu Tian. "Lu Ming, why did you suddenly come back?" Mu Jing was overjoyed when he saw Lu Ming. The Dragon League is currently taking over the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace's territory and forces. I happened to be in 9 Dragon City, so I came back to take a look, Lu Ming said. "Oh, what? The Dragon League?" Mu Tian, Mu Jing, and the others nodded. Suddenly, they thought of something and exclaimed. Mu Tian, Mu Jing, and the others looked at Lu Ming in shock. Lu Ming, I heard that there was a great battle in the Middle Continent's holy city. The one who dominated the battle is called Lu Ming. Also, the Dragon League has taken over the world. I heard that the leader of the Dragon League is called Lu Ming. Is that you? Mu Tian stuttered when he spoke. Mu Yi, Mu Jing, and the others also stared at Lu Ming. Cough, cough, that's me. Lu Ming coughed dryly and said, hiss, 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 Mu Tian, Mu Jing, and the others sucked in a breath of cold air and froze on the spot. Although they had guessed it before, they still found it hard to believe after it was confirmed. It felt like they were dreaming. The leader of the Dragon League, the overlord of the Divine Wilderness continent, was actually Lu Ming, the Lu Ming who had walked out of the Tianxian region. It was too shocking. They were stunned for a while before they reacted. Then, they were overjoyed. It must be Lu Ming. They were sure of it. The aura that Lu Ming had exuded was too shocking. He was like a god, the ruler of the world. Compared to him, they were like ants. However, there was one person who had a complicated look in his eyes. He was filled with anxiety. It was Mu Yi. In the past, he had targeted Lu Ming. Now, if Lu Ming wanted to settle the score with him, he did not dare to think further. Seniors, let's take a look at these people first, Lu Ming said. With a suction force, the two black-robed men and Dao Heng were sucked over by Lu Ming. Spare my life, Lu Ming. No, Alliance Leader Lu. Spare my life. Dao Heng screamed in horror. As for the two black-robed men, they were trembling as they begged for mercy. They had heard the conversation between Lu Ming and the others and were almost scared to death. This young man who had suddenly appeared was the leader of the newly established Dragon League. Why would such a big shot suddenly come to the small Tianxian city? It seemed like he was on good terms with Mu Tian and the others. Dao Heng and the others thought that they were dreaming. It was a terrifying nightmare. Tell me, who ordered you to do this? Lu Ming's eyes turned cold as he shouted. Dao Heng and the others were so scared that they trembled. Obviously, there was someone behind the two black-robed men. It's the Blood Mountain sect. We are the disciples of the Blood Mountain sect. The Blood Mountain sect wants to take advantage of the Emperor Heavenly Divine Palace's destruction to secretly plunder a batch of treasures to strengthen themselves. The black-robed man who had appeared first shouted. He did not dare to hide anything from Mu Tian. So, it's the Blood Mountain sect. Mu Tian's face changed. The Blood Mountain sect was the strongest force in the surrounding dozens of regions. Legend had it that they had a spiritual god expert. In the past, they had always sided with the Emperor Heavenly Divine Palace and were a subsidiary sect of the Emperor Heavenly Divine Palace. Now that the news of the Emperor Heavenly Divine Palace's destruction had spread, the Blood Mountain sect could no longer sit still. They wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to reap some benefits. The Blood Mountain sect doesn't need to exist anymore. A cold light flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. Then, he struck out with his palm. Boom! Under Lu Ming's palm, a huge crack appeared in the space, revealing a pitch-black void passageway. Boom! The void passageway shook. Everyone could see that the other side of the void passageway had also cracked open. An extremely majestic giant mountain appeared. On the giant mountain, there was a bloody mist lingering. The Blood Mountain sect. This was the Blood Mountain sect. Ha! Lu Ming shouted. He flipped his hand and pressed down. Everyone watched in horror as a huge palm formed in the sky above the Blood Mountain sect. It covered the sky and the sun as it pressed down on the Blood Mountain sect. Chapter 1358. Mu Tian, Mu Jing, Mu Yi, and the others had never seen such an unbelievable scene. They stood there dumbfounded, their eyes wide open. As for Dao Heng and the two black-robed men, their bodies were like sieves, trembling non-stop. This was like a myth in their eyes. In actuality, this kind of method was nothing to a ruler. An ordinary emperor could cross hundreds of millions of miles to kill an enemy. However, the further the distance, the weaker the power. If an ordinary ruler were to cross the void to kill an enemy, even a supreme being would not be able to deal with them. Therefore, ordinary rulers would not do this when they encountered a powerful enemy. With Lu Ming's current combat strength, it was easy for him to cross hundreds of millions of miles to kill a sect with only a spiritual god. However, Lu Ming did not kill the Blood Mountain sect martial artists with low cultivation levels. He only killed martial artists whose cultivation levels were above the Spirit Sea realm. Thousands of experts were turned into ashes by Lu Ming's palm, including the spiritual god leading the group. Whoosh! Suddenly, a bloody light shot up into the sky from the Blood Mountain sect and fled into the distance. Blood Emperor of Cold Blood Hall, you're the one behind this. Lu Ming's gaze turned cold, and he shouted coldly. Lu Ming recognized the bloody light from the Blood Mountain sect at a glance. It was the Blood Emperor of Cold Blood Hall. Back then, when Cold Blood Hall attacked Floating Mountain, he led his men to reinforce Floating Mountain and besieged Cold Blood Hall. Blood Emperor of Cold Blood Hall was severely injured by Mo Yi and Martial Emperor Yu Xian, and only Spirit God managed to escape. During this period of time, the Blood Emperor had not appeared. Lu Ming thought that the Blood Emperor's spirit god had dissipated and his body and spirit had been destroyed. Unexpectedly, the Blood Emperor's spirit god had taken over a body in a remote place like the eastern wilderness. Until now, his cultivation had recovered to the 7th level of the spirit god. He was the one who controlled the Blood Mountain sect to collect treasures to help him recover. Where do you think you're going? Lu Ming's glabella shone. His second body took a step forward and rushed into the void passageway. At the same time, he waved his hand and a phoenix feather flying sword flew out. In an instant, it appeared on the other side of the void passageway and slashed at the Blood Emperor. The Blood Emperor let out an unwilling scream as he was sliced in half by the phoenix feather flying sword and died on the spot. Whoosh! The second body kept the phoenix feather flying sword and returned to Lu Ming's forehead through the void tunnel. Lu Ming waved his hand and the spatial crack disappeared. However, Mu Tian and the others were still unable to recover from their shock. They were all stunned. The series of events just now was really too shocking. Was this the method of a pinnacle expert of the divine wilderness continent? Is this the method of a ruler? It was like a legend. Some people even felt chills run down their spines. Such methods were truly unimaginable. No wonder everyone was so respectful towards the emperor, not daring to show the slightest bit of disrespect. Because if you offended the emperor would be able to kill you from 100 million miles away. After a long while, Mu Tian and the others regained their senses. When they looked at Lu Ming, their eyes were filled with awe. This was all towards power. Alliance leader, we've already said, can you spare my life? A black-robed man said with a trembling voice. Did I promise to spare your lives? Lu Ming said indifferently. With a wave of his hand, Dao Heng, the two black-robed men and the experts who came to attack Tianxian's city turned into ashes in an instant. It seems like we have to take down these small sects as soon as possible, Lu Ming said in a low voice. Now that the overlord forces had been destroyed, the small forces below them would definitely be in chaos and start killing each other. Only by taking them down as soon as possible and tidying them up would they be able to avoid unnecessary killing. By the way, where's Senior Mulins? Lu Ming asked. Lan, Mu Tian, Mu Jing, and the others glanced around and didn't see Mulins. For a moment, they didn't know what to say. Senior Mulins isn't here? Then forget it. After pondering for a moment, Lu Ming said with a smile. Mu Tian and the others sighed in their hearts. Seniors, Lu Ming has something to do and needs to rush to Nine Dragon City. If you want to leave Tianxian region and move to the central continent in the future, just send someone to inform me, Lu Ming said. We've lived in Tianxian region for our whole lives and are used to it. Alliance leader Lu, we appreciate your kindness, Mu Tian said. Unknowingly, he had also changed the way he addressed Lu Ming. Lu Ming naturally noticed it too. He sighed in his heart and didn't say anything. He was no longer the young Lu Ming from back then. He was now the alliance leader of the Dragon Alliance and the overlord of the world. Mu Tian and the others' attitude towards him had changed and they respected him. This was something that couldn't be helped. After that, Lu Ming bade farewell to Mu Tian and the others and headed to Nine Dragons City. After Lu Ming left, a figure flew out from a pavilion in Tianxian City. It was Mulin's. "Lan'er, why didn't you come out to meet us just now?" Mu Tian asked. Mu Lan looked in the direction that Lu Ming had left in. There was longing in her eyes, but more than that, there was a complicated expression. "My talent is too far away from Lu Ming's. As time passes, the gap between us will only widen. He and I are people from two different worlds after all." Mulin sighed. Mu Tian, Mu Jing, and the others also sighed. "Even if I come out and follow him, what's the use? We can't grow old together." Mulin's continued. Yes, her current cultivation was only at the Spirit Sea realm. She was very clear about her talent. In this lifetime, the Spirit Embryo realm was her limit. She had almost no hope of reaching the Spirit God realm. However, the Spirit Embryo realm only had a lifespan of 3,000 years. However, Lu Ming had a long lifespan. Emperors could live for 10 to 20,000 years. If Lu Ming's cultivation improved, wouldn't his lifespan be even longer? Even if she and Lu Ming were to be together, they wouldn't be able to spend the rest of their lives together. Moreover, the person in Lu Ming's heart isn't me. In the end, Mulin sighed and turned to return to Tianxian City. Back then, Mulin's entered a hidden sect to cultivate. She hoped to catch up to Lu Ming. However, in the end, she realized that the gap between her and Lu Ming was getting wider and wider. So much so that she couldn't catch up anymore. In the end, all her feelings could only turn into a long sigh. Sigh. Mulin's wasn't the only one who sighed. Millions of miles away from Tianxian City, Lu Ming stood in the sky and sighed. He naturally knew that Mulin's was in Tianxian City. However, how could he not guess Mulin's thoughts? In that situation, he could only play dumb. Otherwise, even if he met Mulin's, what could he do? How could he get along with her? Lu Ming could only suppress the ignorant feelings of friendship that he had when he was a teenager in his heart. Lu Ming took a step forward and the space cracked. He disappeared into the space tunnel. After Lu Ming returned to Nine Dragons City, he sped up the integration of the small factions and sections. Wherever the Dragon Alliance passed, those small factions and sects naturally surrendered and joined the Dragon Alliance. Even if there were some obstacles, they were suppressed by lightning. The Dragon Alliance officially infiltrated every corner of the Divine Wilderness continent and ruled the world. Of course, Lu Ming didn't know that a crisis was approaching Lu Ming. Chapter 1359. Lu Ming was teaching his two unnamed disciples, Zhuang Xiaoshan and Zhuang Xiero, in a courtyard of the 100 Beast tribe in the northern plains. After Lu Ming rose to power, he had plenty of resources. He had all kinds of profound crystals, spirit pills, and miraculous medicines. Therefore, Zhuang Xiaoshan and Zhuang Xiao's cultivation improved very quickly. They had both broken through to the spiritual sea realm. Xiaoshan, although your improvement in the concept of earth using profound crystals is fast, it's still far from enough. You have to comprehend it more in the future. It will be of great help to your cultivation in the future. Do you understand? Lu Ming gave Zhuang Xiaoshan some pointers. Master, I understand. Zhuang Xiaoshan quickly nodded. The two siblings looked at Lu Ming with admiration. Although the two of them were only Lu Ming's unnamed disciples, Lu Ming didn't have any true disciples. He only had two unnamed disciples. Therefore, their status in the Dragon Alliance was very special. Many strong people, even emperors, would be polite to them when they saw them. They wouldn't have dared to imagine this in the past. However, it was really happening in front of them now. They understood that all of this was because of Lu Ming. If it wasn't for Lu Ming, they would be nothing. Even Spirit Embryo Realm martial artists would see them as ants, let alone emperors. But now, they only needed to say a word and countless Spirit Embryo Realm, and even Spirit God Realm martial artists would work for them. Even a ruler would make a move for them. All of this was because of Lu Ming. They also understood that they were not very talented. In the divine wilderness continent, there were countless people who were more talented than them. They were fortunate enough to become Lu Ming's in-name disciples. It was a blessing that they had accumulated over several lifetimes. Therefore, they were exceptionally hardworking in their cultivation. Xiaoshan, I'll use the concept of earth. Comprehend it carefully. Lu Ming's voice interrupted Zhuang Xiaoshan's complicated thoughts. Zhuang Xiaoshan quickly focused. Boom! Lu Ming released the aura of the concept of earth. The heavy concept of earth enveloped Zhuang Xiaoshan. Zhuang Xiaoshan immediately closed his eyes and sat down cross-legged to comprehend it quietly. Xiaoro, come over here and feel the concept of water, Lu Ming said to Zhuang Xiaoro. Yes, master. Zhuang Xiaoro answered obediently. She blinked her big eyes and looked at Lu Ming with adoration. Comparatively speaking, Zhuang Xiaoro was much more talented than Zhuang Xiaoshan. Lu Ming waved his hand and the concept of water spread out. Like a river, it enveloped Zhuang Xiaoro. Zhuang Xiaoro also quickly sat down cross-legged and began to carefully comprehend. Along the way, Lu Ming only had time to teach these two disciples because he was relatively free during this period of time. Over the past 2 months, everything had been developing in an orderly manner. Some time ago, Lu Ming had invited 9 emperors to cleanse Li Ping's meridians and marrow using the elixir as a foundation. Li Ping had been reborn from an ordinary person who didn't know how to cultivate. She had become a martial genius with great talent. During this period of time, she had cultivated with Lu Yuntian, and her cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds. Of course, Lu Ming had also helped Lu Yuntian, Hua Qi, and the others to improve their physiques and talents. Their cultivation had also improved by leaps and bounds. At the same time, Lu Ming had sent a purchase order to the entire divine wilderness continent. He was buying the 7 main spiritual materials for refining nirvana pills at a high price. He hoped to refine another batch of nirvana pills. The progress was quite smooth. During this period of time, he had already collected 5 of the 7 main spiritual materials, which was out of Lu Ming's expectations. The construction of the Dragon Emperor's city was also more than half completed. He believed that it would be completed in another 2 months. Therefore, the upper echelons of the Dragon Alliance discussed and decided to hold an alliance establishment ceremony in the Dragon Emperor's city 3 months later. They would announce to the world that the Dragon Alliance was officially established. At the same time, they would confer territories to the various experts and forces. The entire divine wilderness continent was looking forward to the arrival of that day. At that time, the world would celebrate together. In the western part of the divine wilderness continent, across an endless ocean, there was a continent called the Bayou continent. This continent was the strongest continent in the divine wilderness continent group of Southern Divine Palace. It was ranked 4th in the divine wilderness continent group. In the eastern part of the Bayou continent, in a desolate valley, there was a cloud of blood mist surging wildly. It kept rolling and rolling, which was extremely terrifying. The valley was covered with the skeletons of demonic beasts. From the aura of the skeletons, one could tell that they were extremely powerful existences. Most of them were advanced spiritual gods, and there were even some supremes. After a while, the cloud of blood mist dissipated, revealing a figure. It was D. Damn it, Lu Ming, I will tear you to pieces! A ferocious roar filled with murderous intent came out of Di's mouth. Now, his aura was several times weaker than before. It was only the aura of a LV1 martial emperor. Also, the 10,000 veins spiritual body that he had cultivated for 10,000 years had been completely burned up because of his escape. 10,000 years of effort had turned into flowing water. Damn it! My 10,000 veins spiritual body was about to succeed and become an earth-rank spiritual body. At that time, my cultivation speed and combat strength would greatly increase. I would definitely be valued by the family. It's all Lu Ming's fault, it's all his fault. D kept roaring, and his emotions were extremely agitated. After a while, D calmed down a little. The family should have received the news that I sent to them. The experts in the family should be here soon. Lu Ming, I will make you suffer a fate worse than death. Di Yi's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Northern plains of the divine wilderness continent. 3 hours later, Zhuang Xiaoshan and Zhuang Xiaoro woke up from their comprehension. All right, go back and comprehend well. After a while, I will test you and check the results of your cultivation. Lu Ming instructed. Yes, master, we will take our leave. Zhuang Xiaoro and Zhuang Xiaoshan bowed and left. Let's go to the Imperial Dragon City. Lu Ming stood up and took a step forward. His figure disappeared. Not long after, Lu Ming arrived at the Imperial Dragon City. The Imperial Dragon City was more than half completed. The construction of the Imperial Dragon City involved martial arts experts and inscription path experts. They were selected from various major forces, and even with the assistance of emperors, it still took such a long time. It could be seen how vast and majestic the construction of the Imperial Dragon City was. Lu Ming stood in the sky above the Imperial Dragon City. He couldn't see the end of it at all. At each of the 4 gates of the Imperial Dragon City, there was a 10,000-foot-tall statue. The owner of the statue was Lu Ming. Entering from the south gate, there was a passage called the Divine Dragon Path. It led to a square paved with white jade. This square was surrounded by countless seats, which were prepared to receive distinguished guests. The entire Imperial Dragon City was built on the original Longhua Mountain. Longhua Mountain originally had a huge Dao Eye. It was much faster to cultivate and comprehend the concept of heaven and earth here. Later, several emperors moved a few Dao Eyes from other places with great magical powers, making the concept of the Imperial Dragon City clearer. Moreover, the emperors worked together to move a few spiritual eyes. In addition, the emperors who cultivated the path of inscription had inscribed the energy-gathering formation here. The spiritual energy here was so dense that it almost couldn't be dispersed. Chapter 1360. Lu Ming glanced at it, and was very satisfied. Then, he looked to the east. There was a place that he should go, the 9 Dragons Relic. During this time, Lu Ming had refined the drop of 9 Dragons' blood essence that he had obtained from Di. He had merged it with the 9 Dragons' bloodline and obtained more memories of the 9 Dragons. It was time to go to the 9 Dragons' Relic. Lu Ming took a step forward, and the space automatically split open. Then, he disappeared without a trace. The 9 Dragons' Relic was at the border of the eastern wilderness and the central continent, in the chaotic area. Lu Ming's figure silently appeared in the chaotic area and headed toward the 9 Dragons' Relic. As Lu Ming flew, the area ahead became more and more desolate. There was not a single blade of grass on the vast mountain. It was dead silent, as if all the vitality had been devoured by something. Further ahead, the desolate mountain turned into a desert. It was even more dead silent. When Lu Ming arrived at the center of the desert, he saw a cave. It was an unfathomably deep cave. It was dark and led to the depths of the earth. There was a dark yellow stone tablet at the side of the cave. There was a line of words written on the stone tablet: "Emperors and above who enter will die." The words were filled with killing intent. It was as if there was a terrifying killing intent coming from it, making one's body turn cold. As expected, Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. There had always been a legend that emperors and above could not enter the 9 Dragons' Relic. If one entered, they would die. That was why Martial Emperor Di did not dare to enter but let Supremacy Jiuyang enter. Lu Ming's glabella shone. His second body appeared and stood at the side. His second body had already broken through to the Emperor realm, and could not enter. Whoosh! Lu Ming's main body did not hesitate and rushed into the dark cave. As soon as he entered, a terrifying force came from the cave, causing Lu Ming's body to sink. It was as if he was carrying tens of thousands of mountains. His body fell straight down. Moreover, he fell faster and faster. Stop! Lu Ming's true essence burst out to resist the force. Although it had some effect, it was not very good. It only slowed down the speed of his fall. It wasn't until Lu Ming used the concept of primal chaos that he was able to resist that power, and freely control his body. Lu Ming controlled himself to descend at an even speed. The cave was unfathomably deep. Lu Ming felt that he had descended a few hundred li, but he was still descending. Moreover, at the edge of the cave, Lu Ming felt a terrifying killing intent more than once. It was as if there was a wave of energy that swept over his body and then retracted. Lu Ming guessed that if his cultivation exceeded that of a ruler, he might suffer a terrifying attack. It kept falling. Lu Ming estimated that it had fallen for about 500 kilometers before finally reaching the bottom. Sweeping his gaze around, he saw a thick layer of bones at the bottom of the cave. Some of the skeletons were sparkling and translucent, as if they were polished from fine jade. Some of the skeletons were dazzling with golden light, as if they were made of gold. One could imagine that the owner of those skeletons must have been an incomparably powerful individual. They might even have been an emperor. Yet, in the end, they were buried here. The dangers of the 9 dragons relic could be imagined. Lu Ming landed on the ground of the cave, but he still felt a strong pressure, which greatly interfered with his movements. His movements became slow, and it became difficult for him to fly. In front of the cave, there was a straight cave that was still pitch black. Lu Ming circulated his vital essence and walked 100 meters in a step. He passed by the skeletons and walked toward the cave in front of him. Roar! Nonetheless, not long after, a dragon's roar was heard. A blood dragon that seemed to be formed by blood mist pounced toward Lu Ming. A true dragon! Lu Ming's eyes moved. This blood dragon had 5 dragon claws on its abdomen. It was a 5-clawed true dragon. Swoosh! The 5-clawed blood dragon pounced toward Lu Ming with astonishing might. A supreme venerable. This 5-clawed blood dragon had the combat strength of a supreme venerable. Boom! Lu Ming punched the blood dragon's claws. The powerful force shattered the blood dragon's claws. Following that, the fist force crushed the blood dragon's body and crushed it. Lu Ming continued to move forward. Roar! Roar! After walking for about 1,000 meters, another dragon's roar was heard. This time, there were 2 roars. 2 5-clawed blood dragons appeared and charged toward Lu Ming. They were also at the supreme venerable level. Of course, they were easily defeated by Lu Ming. Lu Ming continued to move forward, but soon, 3 more blood dragons appeared. As he continued to move forward, more and more blood dragons appeared. In the end, 9 5-clawed blood dragons appeared together. It was equivalent to 9 supreme venerables besieging Lu Ming. With Lu Ming's combat strength, it was naturally not difficult for him to defeat them one by one. However, after passing through the siege of the 9 blood dragons, Lu Ming continued to move forward and encountered another attack. This time, only 3 blood dragons appeared. However, the difference was that these 3 blood dragons all had 6 dragon claws on their abdomens. The 6-clawed blood dragon's combat strength was higher than that of the 5-clawed blood dragon. However, they were still no match for Lu Ming. As Lu Ming made his way through, the number of sieve-clawed blood dragons that appeared became more and more. When Lu Ming made his way through the siege of 9 sieve-clawed blood dragons, 7 more blood dragons with dragon claws appeared. The difficulty was getting higher and higher. When Lu Ming made his way through 9 7-clawed blood dragons, Lu Ming came to an underground stone room. Lu Ming found that there were a few boxes in the stone room, but the boxes had been opened and there was nothing inside. "This is the place where Senior Jiuyang came back then," Lu Ming whispered. He had previously asked Xia Jiuyang about the 9 dragons' relics, and Xia Jiuyang had told him in detail. Back then, Xia Jiuyang had made his way through 9 7-clawed blood dragons and arrived at this stone room. The 2 drops of 9 dragons' blood essence, the 9 dragons' heaven-stomping steps secret manual, and the foundation of the true battle dragon tactics were all obtained from here. They were placed in these boxes back then. Back then, Supreme Jiuyang had reached his limit. If he continued, he would have to face 8-clawed blood dragons, whose combat strength was even more astonishing. Xia Jiuyang was no match for them. "Continue!" Lu Ming strode forward and walked toward the cave in front of the stone room. Sure enough, Each of the blood dragons that appeared in front of him had 8 dragon claws, and their combat strength was astonishing. The combat strength of a single blood dragon was equivalent to a human supreme who had awakened a level 9 divine bloodline. It was extremely powerful. However, it still couldn't stop Lu Ming's footsteps. Lu Ming made his way through all the blood dragons. After defeating 9 8-clawed blood dragons, there was a shocking dragon roar, and a huge 9 dragons appeared in front of Lu Ming. Yes, it was 9 dragons with 9 dragon claws. Although its aura was that of a supreme, it gave Lu Ming an extremely dangerous feeling. Roar! The 9 dragons' bloodline appeared above Lu Ming's head, and Lu Ming turned into 9 dragons. Roar! Roar! The 2 9 dragons charged at each other. The 9 dragons that appeared here were too strong. Ordinary martial monarchs wouldn't be a match for them. They were at least equivalent to a level 2 martial monarch. Lu Ming wasn't a match for them at first. He only started to suppress them when he used the chaotic will. 1 dragon is already so strong. If there are a few more, or even 9 of them, how can I fight them? Chapter 1361. Lu Ming was confident that he could win if there were only 1 of them. However, if there were 2 or 3 of them, Lu Ming would barely be able to maintain a draw. However, if there were 9 of them, Lu Ming could only flee in defeat. Could it be that even he couldn't pass it? Or would he have to wait until he reached the Supreme Being level before he could pass it? A few thoughts flashed in Lu Ming's mind. After a few more moves, Lu Ming rose and tore the blood-colored 9 dragons apart. Unexpectedly, after the blood-colored 9 dragons were torn apart, Lu Ming continued to move forward, but no other blood-colored 9 dragons appeared. After moving forward for a while, a huge underground cave appeared in front of him. As soon as Lu Ming walked in, he heard a series of dragon roars. However, he could only hear the dragon roars, but not the dragon's body. That is, Lu Ming's gaze was fixed on the sky above the cave. He was completely captivated. In the sky above the underground cave, there were 7 sparkling blood-red beads floating. Each bead seemed to be made of blood-red jade, shining brilliantly and emitting a shocking fluctuation. Blood essence, the blood essence of the 9 dragons. Lu Ming's eyes lit up, and his heart thumped. He finally found the blood essence of the 9 dragons. The remaining 7 drops of blood essence of the 9 dragons. Roar! As if sensing something, Lu Ming's spine heated up, and the blood of the 9 dragons flew out on its own, opening its mouth and roaring. Buzz! Buzz! The 7 drops of blood essence of the 9 dragons also vibrated. Each drop was suffused with blood-red light, and a small 9 dragons flew out, resonating with the blood of the 9 dragons. Refine it for me! Lu Ming's eyes flashed. He controlled the blood of the 9 dragons and swallowed 1 drop of blood essence. Boom! As soon as the drop of blood essence entered the blood of the 9 dragons, it directly exploded, turning into endless energy and fusing with the blood of the 9 dragons. Lu Ming sat cross-legged. After refining 1 drop, he continued to refine it. Every time he refined another drop, a piece of information would appear in Lu Ming's mind. It was the memory fragments of the 9 dragons. Of course, Lu Ming's cultivation base didn't increase. The energy in his blood essence was completely absorbed into the 9 dragons' bloodline, as if it were being stored away. It made the 9 dragons' bloodline more and more corporeal, almost like the real 9 dragons. It took a total of 7 days for the 7 drops of blood essence of the 9 dragons to completely merge with the bloodline of the 9 dragons. At this moment, a lot of information appeared in Lu Ming's mind. They were all fragments of the 9 dragons' memories. These fragments slowly overlapped and formed a complete set of information. True Dragon Battle Secrets. Extraordinary Chapter. Dragon God Battle Body. A smile appeared on Lu Ming's face. Previously, the true battle dragon art he had practiced was the Foundation chapter. The main content of the Foundation Establishment chapter was for those before the Martial Monarch realm. After the Martial Monarch realm, the Foundation Establishment chapter would be useless. Now he finally got it. As the name suggested, the dragon god's battle body was mainly used for the cultivation of the spirit body. The cultivation of the spirit body was originally to infuse one's bloodline into one's physical body. After undergoing the tempering of the lightning tribulation, one would be able to form a higher grade spirit body. In other words, those below the martial monarch realm were still essentially mortals. Those above the martial monarch realm had already transcended mortals and reached a higher level of existence. The extraordinary chapter was to infuse the 9 dragons' bloodline into one's physical body and cultivate a spirit body. This spirit body was called the Dragon God Battle Body and was extremely powerful. From the 9 dragons' memories, Lu Ming knew that spirit bodies were also divided into different grades. They were divided into ordinary spirit bodies, earth spirit bodies, and heaven spirit bodies. Each grade was further divided into inferior, intermediate, and superior. According to the 9 dragons' memories, in the Divine Wilderness continent and even the Divine Ruins continent, most of the martial monarch's spiritual bodies were inferior ordinary spirit bodies. Very few of them were intermediate ordinary spirit bodies. For example, Xiao Luan's immortal demon body and Xia Jiuyang's 9 yang divine body should be superior ordinary spirit bodies. As for Di Yi's 10,000 veins spiritual body, if he succeeded, it was very likely to be an inferior earth spirit body. An inferior earth spirit body was extremely powerful. It was much more powerful than an ordinary spirit body. Unfortunately, Di had spent 10,000 years depriving various powerhouses of their bloodlines and blood essence. Unfortunately, he had not succeeded in cultivating it. It was not perfect, and its power was only equivalent to an superior ordinary spirit body. Therefore, he wanted to seize Lu Ming's 9 dragons' blood essence to cultivate the 10,000 veins spiritual body. If he succeeded in cultivating it, he would be invincible among martial monarchs of the same level. It would be easy for him to kill martial monarchs of the same level. It would be normal for him to fight someone of a higher level. If Lu Ming succeeded in cultivating the Dragon God battle body and became a martial monarch, he would be an inferior earth spirit body. The most important point was that the Dragon God battle body could be upgraded. Just like his previous bloodline, it could be upgraded continuously. This made Lu Ming very excited. Another thing that made Lu Ming excited was that if he cultivated the spirit body with the 9 dragons' bloodline, he might be able to retain the 9 dragons' devouring skill after transforming into the Dragon God battle body. In the past, Lu Ming had been struggling with which bloodline to cultivate the spirit body with when he broke through to the martial monarch realm. The prison-suppressing steel bloodline seemed to be stronger than the 9 dragons' bloodline. As for the 3rd bloodline, it was even more mysterious. But now, Lu Ming had made a decision. He planned to use the 9 dragons' bloodline to cultivate the spirit body. As for the prison-suppressing steel bloodline and the 3rd bloodline, he could keep them. He felt that even after he broke through to the martial monarch realm, these 2 bloodlines would still be of great use to him. Then, Lu Ming looked at other memories. There's a lot less. After a while, Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Originally, he thought that after fusing with the 9 dragons' blood essence, he would be able to obtain their complete memories. But now, he realized that most of the memories were blank. For example, where were the 9 dragons from? What happened back then? With the 9 dragons' combat strength, why did they fall? Who killed the 9 dragons? What happened in the heaven realm? These important memories were completely blank. Could it be that the 9 dragons did it on purpose before they died? Lu Ming guessed. However, although these memories were gone, the other memories were still priceless. In his memories there were some powerful combat skills with terrifying power. They could only be cultivated after breaking through to the martial monarch realm, or even higher realms. Every single one of them was a priceless treasure in the outside world. At the same time, through the 9 dragons' memories, Lu Ming finally knew the cultivation realms after that. After the martial monarch realm was the martial saint realm. The martial saint realm was also known as the saint realm, or the saint realm. The lifespan of a martial saint could reach more than 100,000 years. They could roam the world with unparalleled combat strength. Compared to them, martial monarchs were worlds apart. However, the martial saint realm was not the highest realm. It was not the peak. Above the martial saint realm was the peak, the martial emperor realm. The martial emperor realm was also known as the Great Emperor. This was the peak powerhouse of the world. Their lifespan was almost endless, and they stood at the peak of the world. They were unbelievably powerful. With a wave of their hand, they could probably destroy a continent like the divine wilderness. This world did not only refer to the primordial realm, but also the heaven realm. The martial emperor realm was the peak powerhouse. Back then, the 9 dragons were in this realm. The top 10 war beasts were all in this realm. Martial emperor realm, the great emperor! Lu Ming's eyes revealed a look of yearning. His goal was to stand at the peak of the world. He must reach the martial emperor realm in the future. Chapter 1362. Lu Ming closed his eyes and quietly digested part of the 9 dragons' memories. This part of the memories was very precious, including the knowledge of many natural treasures. Most importantly, it contained the 9 dragons' cultivation experience. Jiao was a peak martial emperor expert. How valuable was his cultivation experience? Lu Ming slowly digested it. In the blink of an eye, another half a month passed. Lu Ming opened his eyes. There was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. The 9 dragons' memories also contained information about the chaotic intent. In the 9 dragons' memories, the chaotic intent was the emperor of all intents in the world. Its power was amazing, but it was also very difficult to cultivate. Especially when breaking through, it was very difficult to transform the intent into the embryonic form of a domain. Lu Ming had long known about this. When he used the domain condensing pill, it had almost no effect. Ordinary martial artists, even if they did not have the domain condensing pill, they could slowly dissolve the intent runes and integrate it into their spiritual spirit. 1 or 2 years would be enough. However, the chaotic intent was 100 times more difficult to cultivate than ordinary intents. In other words, if Lu Ming cultivated step by step, it would take at least 100 years to cultivate the embryonic form of a domain and step into the prime level. 100 years was too long. For Lu Ming, it was too long. No, these 100 years are the golden years for me to cultivate. If I spend 100 years cultivating the will of primal chaos, it will be the same as wiping out my potential. Not only will the other geniuses leave me far behind, but my potential will also be exhausted, and my future achievements will be limited. Lu Ming thought in his heart. After a while, Lu Ming gritted his teeth and a trace of ruthlessness appeared in his eyes. Fight! Fight! According to the 9 dragons' cultivation experience, Lu Ming found a method. This method could allow Lu Ming to condense the embryonic form of a domain in a short time. However, there was a great risk. If he was not careful, his cultivation would regress and it would be difficult for him to improve. In the worst case, his body and soul would be destroyed. However, Lu Ming still decided to fight. Any pinnacle expert would have to go through countless trials and tribulations. No one had ever heard of anyone being able to reach the pinnacle without any problems. Fight. Lu Ming made his decision. Moreover, it was right here. Other than him, there shouldn't be anyone else who could reach this place. It was the best place to enter seclusion and make a breakthrough. After closing his eyes for half a day, Lu Ming's mind fell into a state of emptiness as he adjusted himself to his best state. Roar! Next, the 9 dragons' bloodline emerged, and with a loud roar, it rushed into Lu Ming's forehead and appeared in Lu Ming's knowledge sea. Somewhere in Lu Ming's spiritual sea, a concept rune floated, suffused with a chaotic radiance. It was Lu Ming's primal chaos rune. Suddenly, the 9 dragons' bloodlines appeared near the runes of the concept of primal chaos. Roar! Suddenly, the 9 dragons' bloodline roared and pounced at the concept of primal chaos rune. A dragon claw heavily clawed at the rune. Boom! The concept runes emitted loud rumbling noises. Lu Ming felt as if the entire world was being turned upside down. A tearing pain spread out from his mind. It took him quite a while to recover. Again! Lu Ming roared, and the 9 dragons continued to claw at the concept of primal chaos rune. Yes, this was Lu Ming's method. He used a barbaric method to blast open the concept of primal chaos rune, and then used a barbaric method to merge it into his spiritual soul. This method was absolutely crazy. If others knew about it, they would be scared to death. But without a doubt, it was the most effective and time-saving method. Boom! 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 In Xiao Chen's knowledge sea, the 9 dragons attacked the concept of primal chaos rune continuously. At first, the 9 dragons only used 1 dragon claw. Slowly, the number of dragon claws increased to 2, then 3. 10 days later, the 9 dragon claws moved together, continuously bombarding the concept of primal chaos rune. The concept of primal chaos rune shook violently. Kacha! At some unknown time, the concept of primal chaos rune gave off a cracking sound, and a crack appeared on it. Puff! At this moment, Lu Ming's body shook violently, and he vomited large mouthfuls of blood. However, there was no panic in Lu Ming's eyes. Instead, he revealed joy. Continue! The 9 dragons continued to bombard the concept of primal chaos rune. As time passed, more and more cracks appeared on the concept of primal chaos rune. Another 10 days passed. Suddenly, bang! The concept of primal chaos rune exploded. Lu Ming spurted blood from his mouth, and a crack appeared between Lu Ming's eyebrows, and blood flowed out. But Lu Ming couldn't care less. Merge for me! Lu Ming roared, and a strong attractive force came from the spiritual soul in his dantian, attracting the fragments of the concept of primal chaos rune into the spiritual soul. Whoosh whoosh! All the fragments of the concept of primal chaos flew into the spiritual soul. At this moment, the spiritual soul swelled and emitted thousands of rays of light, almost exploding. This step was the most dangerous. If he was not careful, the spiritual soul would explode, his physical body would collapse, and his body and spirit would be destroyed. Suppress! With the thought, the prison-suppressing steel bloodline appeared in his dantian, suspended above the spiritual soul, and suppressed it. At the same time, the third bloodline appeared above Lu Ming's physical body. Waves of power shrouded Lu Ming's entire body. This was the complete plan. Lu Ming combined the cultivation experience of the 9 dragons' root with his own conditions to set up a complete plan. With the help of his 3 bloodlines, he completed this step. The spiritual soul, which was on the verge of collapse, was finally suppressed and merged with the concept of primal chaos fragments, forming the embryonic form of a domain. Lu Ming closed his eyes and focused on cultivation. Time passed day by day. Endless distance away from the divine wilderness continent, in a secret place in the Bayou continent, there was a messy stone forest. In the stone forest, there was an old stone platform. Dee stood beside the stone platform, waiting anxiously. Buzz! Suddenly, the stone platform emitted a light, and then the light became brighter and brighter. Finally, a vortex formed on the stone platform. Suddenly, figures appeared from the black vortex. 1, 2, and finally a total of 10 figures appeared and flew out of the vortex. As soon as the 10 figures flew out, the vortex on the stone platform disappeared. As soon as he saw the 10 people, Dee's face immediately showed respect. The leader of the 10 people was dressed in luxurious clothes. His eyes were long and narrow, and when he opened and closed them, there was a flash of sharpness. Behind the young man, there were 9 people, including elders and burly men. Each of them had a powerful aura and gave people a feeling of extreme danger. Dee of the Dee family's side branch greets young Master Dee Xian. Dee hurriedly bowed to the young man. You are Dee? The young man glanced at Dee with faint disdain. I am Dee, Dee hurriedly said. Humph, Dee, you are really useless. You can't even take down the divine wilderness continent, Dee Xian scolded coldly. Chapter 1363. Dee, your goal was originally the continent group of divine ruins. According to the mission given to you by the family, if you could unify the continent group of divine ruins on your own, you could return to the Dee family and become a direct descendant of the Dee family. Unfortunately, it seems that you have no hope. Di Xian sneered. Di lowered his head even more, his eyes flashing with raging anger. It was all Lu Ming's fault. It was all because of that Lu Ming who had ruined his plan. The Di family came from the Yuanlu and was a powerful force in the Yuanlu. Di was a collateral disciple of the Di family and had a low status. However, there was a rule in the Di family. If a collateral disciple wanted to become a direct descendant and obtain the cultivation conditions and resources of the direct descendant, he had to complete a mission given by the Di family. The mission that Di received was to unify the continent of godly ruins on his own. This mission was not considered difficult among the missions given by the Di family. However, Di's talent was limited. He had come to the continent of godly ruins 10,000 years ago. However, he had just broken through to the martial emperor realm. Therefore, he chose the divine wilderness continent, which was not very powerful, to build the Di Tian divine palace and start his plan. At the same time, he strengthened his cultivation and cultivated the 10,000 veins spiritual body. Now, his plan was slowly maturing. His cultivation had reached the peak of LV2 martial emperor realm. He had obtained the 10,000 veins spiritual body by chance and was only one step away from reaching the complete realm. He was confident that he would be able to reach the complete realm once he obtained another drop of the 9 dragons' blood essence. At that time, he would break through to LV3 martial emperor realm with the help of the 10,000 veins spiritual body. At that time, it would be easy for him to unify the continent of godly ruins. If he spent some time to break through to LV4 martial emperor realm, it would not be a problem for him to unify the continent of godly ruins. At that time, he would be able to return to the Di family and become a direct descendant. His status would be greatly improved and he would be supported by various resources. Not only would his cultivation improve by leaps and bounds, his status in the Di family would also be different. Unfortunately, everything was ruined by Lu Ming. He had been unable to obtain Lu Ming's 9 dragon blood essence, which was why he had rashly launched a war. He wanted to first unify the divine wilderness continent and borrow its power to help him cultivate the 10,000 veins spirit body. But in the end, everything was destroyed by Lu Ming. Even the 10,000 veins spiritual body that he had cultivated for 10,000 years was destroyed. He had no hope at all. It was all Lu Ming's fault. Thinking of Lu Ming, Di's eyes turned red. Moreover, I even sent Di Hongqing and Di Honglei to help you. Where are they now? Do you know how much it costs to teleport from the Yuan continent to a desolate island like the Godly Ruins continent? Di Xian shouted again. According to him, the group of continents in the Divine Ruins had become barren islands. Di Hongqing and the others are dead. Di stammered. What? Where are the 2 sovereign spirit weapons? Di Xian's eyes widened, and a cold murderous intent spread out. Di's heart trembled. Di Xian was the true descendant of the Di family, and his status was much higher than his. If he was angry, not only him, but also his branch in the Di family would be in danger. Lord Xian, please calm down. It's all Lu Ming's fault. If it wasn't for Lu Ming, it wouldn't take long for me to unify the Divine Ruins continent. Di hurriedly apologized. Lu Ming? Di Xian widened his eyes. Yes, Lu Ming. Immediately, Di briefly recounted the previous battle and Lu Ming's matter. You mean, his cultivation hasn't reached the sovereign spirit realm? I didn't expect that there would be such a genius on the barbaric Emperor Island. He must have some secrets. Take him down and I'll study him. Di Xian's eyes flashed with a cold light. Let's go. Di, lead the way. We'll go to the Divine Wilderness continent and meet that Lu Ming. Di Xian ordered. Yes. Di nodded repeatedly and led the way. His face was ferocious. In the 9 dragons relic, Lu Ming was still cultivating. As the days passed, the spiritual spirit in Lu Ming's dantian also slowly calmed down. There was a faint light shining, as if it was nurturing something. One day, the spiritual spirit suddenly shook, and a chaotic light shone out. It's done! Lu Ming's eyes flashed with ecstasy. At the same time, Lu Ming put away the prison-suppressing steel bloodline and the third bloodline. After such a long time, Lu Ming felt that the embryonic form of the chaotic domain had finally been successfully formed. With a wave of his hand, piles of origin stones appeared around Lu Ming. The 9 dragons' bloodline appeared and opened its mouth. The piles of origin stones were swallowed by the 9 dragons' bloodline and began to refine them. The energy of the origin stones was constantly converted into true essence and integrated into the spiritual spirit. The chaotic light in the spiritual spirit became more and more obvious. After a few more days, Lu Ming had swallowed 300 million origin stones. The aura on Lu Ming's body became stronger and stronger, and his true essence became more and more abundant. At a certain moment, buzz! A circle of light spread out from the spiritual spirit, and it grew bigger and bigger. From Lu Ming's body, it covered an area of 100 meters. The domain, the embryonic form of the domain, had finally been completely formed. This was the embryonic form of the chaotic domain. Right now, it was only an embryonic form, and there was still a long way to go before it could be a real domain. Later, Lu Ming would need to continue to comprehend and nurture it. Slowly, the embryonic form of the domain would grow and mature. When he broke through to the Emperor realm in the future, it would naturally become a complete domain. With a thought, the embryonic form of the domain shrank and covered the surface of Lu Ming's body. Boom! Lu Ming casually threw a punch, and the space collapsed, and a black space cave appeared. What a powerful force! Lu Ming felt that the power of the embryonic form of the chaotic domain was much stronger than the pure chaotic will. Is this the power of a 9 heavens supreme? Lu Ming felt the powerful force in his body and wore a confident smile. After forming the embryonic form of the domain, Lu Ming had naturally reached the 9 heavens supreme realm. His current strength was at least a few times stronger than before. He was confident that he could easily kill a second-layer martial dominator realm expert with a martial dominator weapon without the help of his second body, such as Di Hongqin. There's less than a month left until the Alliance establishment ceremony. It's time to go back. Having this thought, Lu Ming immediately made his way back. There were no obstacles on the way back. Lu Ming easily left the 9 dragons' ancient ruins and tore the space apart. Soon, he had returned to the northern valley. Meanwhile, the construction of the Dragon Emperor city had been completed. The first thing Lu Ming did after returning to the northern valley was to order the people to move to the Dragon Emperor city. The Dragon Emperor city was magnificent and spacious. Many people could live there. Furthermore, the Dragon Emperor city had great cultivation conditions, thus many people were eager to move to the Dragon Emperor city. Chapter 1364. The Great Relocation had begun. The Lu family that Lu Ming was from, as well as Hua Qi and the rest, naturally moved to the Dragon Emperor city. Moreover, the land that they were given was the core of the city. The cultivation environment was also the best. Dragon Emperor city began to bustle. In just half a month, millions of people had been transferred to Dragon Emperor city through the trans-territory teleportation formation. However, considering the vast territory of Dragon Emperor city, millions of people were just a small part of the territory. Later on, more and more people would move in. After moving to Dragon Emperor city, many people began to get busy preparing for the Alliance establishment ceremony. The experts of the entire Divine Wilderness continent began to gather in Dragon Emperor city. On this day, Di and the others also entered the Divine Wilderness continent. As soon as they entered, they heard that the Alliance establishment ceremony would be held in Dragon Emperor city in a few days. Haha, that's good. Let's kill Lu Ming at the so-called Alliance establishment ceremony. Di Xian sneered. Young Master Di Xian, Lu Ming can control the divine 9-dragon cauldron and has endless power. We have to be careful, Di said. Lu Ming's control of the divine 9-dragon cauldron was too powerful and shocking. Even a third-level martial emperor expert would have to avoid it. Well, let's go to 9 Dragon City first and seal the divine 9-dragon cauldron so that Lu Ming can't use it, Di Xian said. They tore the space apart, and headed for Nine Dragon City. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. The Alliance establishment ceremony had officially begun. At the end of the Divine Dragon Passage in Dragon Emperor City, experts gathered in the square paved with white jade. Except for the Western Desert, all the emperors had arrived. There were hundreds of supreme beings, as well as tens of thousands of sect masters and sect masters of various forces. They took their seats on both sides of the square. These people were all people who stood at the pinnacle of the divine wilderness continent. They were important figures who stood at the peak. Today, they were all gathered here. Outside the square, there was an even more spacious place filled with banquets. At least 1 million people had gathered here. Not only that, all the forces in the divine wilderness continent began to celebrate. Today, the world celebrated together. Vice Alliance leader has arrived! A voice came from the sky and spread across the entire Dragon Emperor city. Ciel Wan and the old army chief, one on the left and one on the right, stepped through the air and landed on the 2 sides of the plaza. Greetings, Vice Alliance leaders! Everyone stood up and saluted the 2 vice leaders. Rise! Please rise! Ciel Wan and the old general raised their hands. After that, Ciel Wan and the old general looked at the depth of Dragon Emperor City. The Alliance Master has arrived! The voice from before appeared once again. Whoosh! 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 All the people fixed their eyes on the deep part of Dragon Emperor City. A few figures were approaching from deep within the Dragon Emperor City. Lu Ming, Xian Yanqing, and Lu Ming's parents, Lu Yutian and Li Ping. Today, Lu Ming had specially changed his clothes. He was wearing a purple-gold robe with a majestic and lifelike 9-clawed dragon embroidered on it. His long hair was tied up high, and he wore a purple-gold crown. He wore golden dragon boots and a golden jade belt around his waist. A powerful oppressive aura was emitted from his body. The 4 of them landed at the top of the plaza. Greetings, Alliance leader! At the scene, inside and outside the square, millions of powerhouses bowed to Lu Ming. The sound waves gathered and scattered the clouds in the sky. Rise, please take a seat! Lu Ming waved his hand and his voice spread far and wide. Thank you, Alliance leader! Millions of people began to take their seats. Today, we are mainly celebrating the establishment of the Dragon Alliance. Then, we will divide the territories, Lu Ming said. He didn't say much, but many people's hearts raced. The Dragon Alliance had unified the world, including the northern plains, eastern wilderness, southern underworld, and central continent. How to divide the territories and who to send to guard them was a question that everyone was concerned about. After all, there were huge benefits involved in this matter. Let's begin, Lu Ming announced. The first step was for many forces to step forward and swear a blood oath to form the Dragon Alliance to rule the divine wilderness. Ha ha! It seems that I came at the right time today! At this moment, a burst of laughter came from afar. A golden light flashed and a figure appeared in the sky. That's Dee! It's Dee! Many people shouted. Some people even had looks of fear on their faces. Martial Monarch Dee had occupied almost half of the divine desolate continent back then. His might was too great. Many large and small factions had been ruled by Dee. Now that Dee had appeared, those people naturally panicked. Dee, you still dare to come here? That's great. Today, we will use your blood as a sacrifice to the flag. Ciel Wan shouted and a demonic chi soared into the sky. Lu Ming didn't say anything. Confusion flashed in his eyes. He could clearly see Dee's current realm. He was only at the peak of LV1 Martial Emperor realm. In the last battle, Dee had injured his origin and his cultivation had regressed by 1 level. With such a cultivation level, any one of them could easily kill Dee, let alone Lu Ming, Ciel Wan, the old general, and Tu Qian. Why did Dee still dare to come here? Dee, let the others come out together, Lu Ming said and looked behind Dee. Ha ha ha, if you let me show up, it will be your death. A burst of laughter came and the space cracked. A total of 10 figures appeared in the sky and looked down at the Imperial Dragon City from above. Who are these people? I've never seen them before. Many people were discussing. You are Lu Ming? Di Xian looked at Lu Ming. That's right, Lu Ming said. Good, very good. I've heard that you've killed 2 experts from my Di family, Di Hongqing and Di Honglei. You've even taken away their Emperor-level spiritual weapons. Now come over here and hand over your Emperor-level spiritual weapons. Kneel down and beg me to spare your life. Perhaps I'll consider sparing your life. Di Xian put his hands behind his back and looked down at Lu Ming with a superior look. How dare you disrespect the Alliance leader? You deserve to die. A loud shout came from the square. A tall figure shot up into the sky and a vast aura filled the square. This was an emperor. He used to be the emperor of an overlord force in the central continent. His name was Sky King, and he had surrendered to Lu Ming. Therefore, he was the lowest-ranked emperor in the Dragon Alliance. He had been looking for an opportunity to show off in front of Lu Ming and win Lu Ming's trust. Now that he had such a good opportunity, he had to seize it. Boom! Kongtian Martial Emperor threw a palm strike at Di Xian. How dare you disrespect young Master Di Xian? Die! A middle-aged man walked out from behind Di Xian. He held a sword with both hands and slashed. A terrifying sword chi appeared above the Sky Emperor's head in a flash and broke through his attack and defense. Then it slashed down. Chapter 1365. He had killed an emperor with a single slash. Most of the people at the scene widened their eyes in shock. Peak second layer Martial Royal Realm! He's a peak second layer Martial Royal Realm expert! One of the emperors said solemnly. The middle-aged man who walked out from behind Di Xian was a peak second layer Martial Royal Realm expert. Bang! 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 Xiaoluan, the old general, and the others unleashed their auras. All the emperors of the Dragon Alliance gathered their auras and pressed down on Di Xian and the others. Cold murderous intent burst out from their bodies. How dare you kill people in Dragon Emperor City? You'll all die today, the old general said coldly. I don't care who you are. You'll have to pay the price today, Xiaoluan said as a terrifying saber glow flickered on his body. Stay? Price? Ha ha ha, how ridiculous. Let's see how you're going to kill me today. Di Xian burst out laughing and waved his hand. Bang! 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 The remaining people behind Di Xian unleashed their auras. Each of their auras was like a smoke signal soaring into the sky. Each of their auras was vast and boundless, forming a powerful pressure that pressed down on the hearts of the people in Dragon Emperor City. Xiaoluan, the old general, and the others' eyes widened in shock and disbelief. These people's auras were too powerful. Including the middle-aged man who had attacked before, there were 6 of them in total. All of them were peak second-layer Martial Royal Realm experts. 2 of them had even more terrifying auras. They were much stronger than peak second-layer Martial Royal Realm experts. Third-layer Martial Royal Realm experts. Third-layer Martial Royal Realm experts. 6 peak second-layer Martial Royal Realm experts and 2 peak third-layer Martial Royal Realm experts. There was also a silver-haired old man standing behind Di Xian. He did not emit any aura, but he gave off an even more dangerous feeling. The hearts of the people in Dragon Emperor City sank. What kind of enormous power was this? Currently, the strongest cultivators in the Divine Wilderness continent were only peak second-layer Martial Royal Realm experts. Only a few of them were at the peak. None of them were peak third-layer Martial Royal Realm experts. Now, there were 6 peak second-layer Martial Royal Realm experts and 2 peak third-layer Martial Royal Realm experts behind Di Xian. How could they fight against them? Ha ha, Lu Ming, aren't you arrogant? Today, the experts of my Di clan are here. All of you will die. Di laughed. His eyes were ferocious, and his voice was full of hatred. Today, he wanted Lu Ming to suffer a fate worse than death. Di's voice made many people tremble. Could it be that the Dragon Alliance was going to be destroyed before it was even officially formed? Lu Ming, what do you think? Hurry up and hand over the sovereign spirit weapon. Get over here and admit your guilt. Perhaps you can still save your dog life. Di Xian sneered and continued to look down at Lu Ming, as if he was sure that Lu Ming would be defeated. A ruler's spiritual weapon was a weapon that could only be unleashed by a top-grade ruler. Even for Di Xian, it was very precious. Those two ruler's spiritual weapons were one of the few he had. Of the 9 experts he had brought with him, only 1 or 2 of them possessed an emperor-level spirit weapon. Ming'er. Lu Yuntian and Li Ping looked at Lu Ming worriedly. Father, mother, don't worry. It'll be fine. Lu Ming smiled at Lu Yuntian and Li Ping. That smile was full of confidence. Seeing Lu Ming smile, Lu Yuntian and Li Ping somehow calmed down. Then, Lu Ming ignored Di Xian and looked at Di. Di, you escaped last time. You should have hidden well. That way, you might have been able to prolong your life. Instead, you came here to court death. You brought this upon yourself. Many people were stunned when they heard Lu Ming's words. Under such circumstances, Lu Ming still wanted to kill Di? He couldn't even protect himself. Only a few people, such as Xie Luan, Xia Jiuyang, and Yan Kuangtu, had their eyes lit up. They knew Lu Ming very well. Lu Ming wouldn't shoot without thinking. Di himself was also stunned. Under such circumstances, Lu Ming still wanted to kill him? Where did Lu Ming get his confidence from? Di Xian's face completely darkened. Lu Ming dared to ignore him? Bang! Bang! Di Xian stepped forward step by step, releasing a powerful aura. Supreme! Di Xian's cultivation was at the supreme realm. This also shocked many people in the Imperial Dragon City. Because Di Xian didn't look old. He was definitely not more than 30 years old. He might even be in his early 20s. In his early 20s, his cultivation had reached the supreme realm. This was too shocking. It had never happened in the history of the Divine Wilderness continent. Lu Ming, I heard that your battle strength is very strong. Today, I'd like to see how strong you are. Di Xian said, locking his aura on Lu Ming. You want to challenge me? Lu Ming curled the corners of his lips slightly. Behind Di Xian, Di's eyes flickered, but he didn't say anything. He knew that some of the geniuses in the Emperor family were extremely powerful. They were far from being comparable to the so-called geniuses in the Divine Wilderness continent. Although Lu Ming was strong, Di Xian might be able to fight him. Even if he couldn't, letting Lu Ming offend Di Xian would be beneficial to him. That's right. Do you dare to accept my challenge? Di Xian said. Since you're looking for a beating, of course I'll fulfill your wish. Lu Ming smiled and stepped forward, facing Di Xian from afar. Lu Ming, I heard that you're a rare genius in the Divine Wilderness continent. However, I'll let you know that the so-called geniuses in a barbaric island like yours are nothing but a joke. Di Xian sneered. His body began to flicker with light. The light was like strands of sword qi. Clang! A battle sword appeared in Di Xian's hand. He stepped toward Lu Ming and shouted, Kill! Swoosh! A sword aura split the sky and slashed violently toward Lu Ming. Boom! Lu Ming punched out with the hell-suppressing heaven skill. The fist force collided with the sword qi. The space was torn into pieces. Lu Ming's body shook and he was forced to take 3 steps back. However, Di Xian stood still in the air. Hiss! Many people in Dragon Emperor City gasped at the same time. Lu Ming was forced back by a single sword strike? In the Battle of the Sacred City, everyone still remembered Lu Ming's shocking strength. Even a peak LV2 martial royal realm martial artist with a spiritual weapon of the Emperor realm was killed by Lu Ming. Now, Lu Ming was forced back by a single sword strike. Moreover, his opponent was a young man who was less than 30 years old. It was shocking. His body? Lu Ming's heart stirred and he was secretly shocked. Although he did not use his full strength just now and only displayed the cultivation of a perfect spirit god, he still unleashed the power of 9 dragons and performed the hell-suppressing heaven skill. Even an ordinary emperor would not be a match for him. However, his opponent was only a supreme being, and yet the battle prowess he unleashed was shocking. What surprised Lu Ming the most was his opponent's body. It was a spiritual body. Yes, his opponent was only a supreme being, but he had a spiritual body. It was unbelievable. Chapter 1366. However, wasn't a true spiritual body something that could only be condensed after reaching the Emperor realm? That's a spiritual body? That's right. It's a sword spiritual body. How is that possible? How can a prime have a spiritual body? The emperors of the Dragon Alliance were in an uproar. Even Ciel Wan and the old general, who had lived for a long time, were shocked. They could naturally feel the power of Dicien's spiritual body. Innate spiritual body, that's an innate spiritual body. Haha, how can these bumpkins know the power of an innate spiritual body? An innate spiritual body is an innate spiritual body. Behind them, Di's eyes were filled with shock, but he was also laughing in his heart. He was born in Yuanlu, so his vision was naturally different. He knew that some people were blessed by the heavens. They were born with a spiritual body. This was known as the innate spiritual body. Such people were born as peerless geniuses. Needless to say, their bloodline would definitely be able to awaken a level 9 divine level. At the same time, their bloodline and spiritual body would be in perfect harmony. Such people were blessed by nature and had an advantage over others in terms of bloodline martial skills, comprehension of intent, and comprehension of various martial skills. Therefore, their combat strength was also terrifying. And Dicien was such a person. You can block one of my attacks. Come again! Dicien shouted. Rays of sword-shaped light flowed on the surface of his body. He slashed with his battle sword, and a shocking sword chi slashed toward Lu Ming. Primal Chaos! Lu Ming stepped forward and displayed the Primal Chaos intent. At the same time, his third bloodline appeared and he punched out again. It was the same suppressing Hell-Heaven skill, but when combined with the Primal Chaos intent, its power skyrocketed. Boom! This time, Lu Ming did not move at all. Instead, it was Dicien who was pushed back. Damn it! Kill! Dicien was furious after being pushed back. His aura rose to the extreme, and his domain covered his entire body. He charged toward Lu Ming and slashed with his sword. The roar of 100 beasts could be heard. Dicien's martial skill was not to be underestimated. It seemed to have maximized the power of the domain. Domain martial skill! A thought flashed through Lu Ming's mind. Domain martial skill was similar to martial skill of intent. A concept martial technique could unleash the power of a concept to the extreme, while a domain martial technique could unleash the power of a domain martial technique to the extreme. Dicien's domain martial technique was even more shocking. The sword light seemed to be able to destroy everything. Lu Ming added the concept of primal chaos to his body and fought fiercely with his opponent. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged several dozen moves. To be honest, Dicien was really strong. He was the strongest young man Lu Ming had ever met. His strength was comparable to Lu Ming's strength before he had achieved the 9 Heavens Supreme Realm, which was equivalent to the peak second layer Martial Dominator Realm. He was only a supreme being, yet his battle prowess was already so shocking. It was beyond imagination. At the same level, he was even stronger than Longqin. The bloodline that Longqin had awakened was the Archean Dragonesque Elephant, one of the top 10 beasts. But now, Lu Ming had already broken through to the Supreme Being level, so he naturally didn't think much of it. Damn it! How can there be such a strong person on a desolate island? The more they fought, the more frightened Dicien became. This person definitely has a secret. If I can obtain his secret, I will definitely become stronger. Who knows, I might even be able to compete with those monstrous geniuses in my clan. Upon having this thought, Dicien's heart began to burn. Clang! His glabella shone and a dazzling golden battle sword flew out, slashing at Lu Ming. Clang! Lu Ming's punch collided with the sword, causing his figure to be knocked backward. A martial dominator weapon! Lu Ming's eyes flickered, but he was not too surprised. With his talent and background, it was normal for him to have a martial dominator weapon. Die! Dician let out a roar as he charged at Lu Ming. Is this all you've got? Let's end this! Lu Ming uttered a roar as the chaotic will encapsulating his figure changed rapidly. It contracted rapidly at first, before it blossomed. It was no longer a will, but a domain, the embryonic form of the chaotic domain. Meanwhile, Lu Ming's aura skyrocketed. Supreme Being, the Alliance leader has achieved the 9 Heavens Supreme Realm. Xie Luan and the others were overjoyed. Bang! Lu Ming's fist was wrapped in the embryonic form of the chaotic domain as he threw a punch at Dician's martial dominator weapon. Clang! The battle sword vibrated violently as Dician's expression changed drastically. His body shook violently as he was sent flying like a cannonball. Along the way, he spat out blood. When Lu Ming revealed his true strength, Dician was crushed and severely injured. Die! Lu Ming's figure flashed as he caught up with Dician and threw a punch at his heart. This punch was enough to penetrate Dician's heart. However, when Lu Ming's punch was about to hit Dician's heart, Dician's body suddenly emitted a dazzling golden light as a golden armor appeared. Clang! Lu Ming's fist landed on the armor. The armor shook violently, but it did not break as it blocked most of Lu Ming's fist energy. However, Lu Ming's punch was too powerful. Although the armor had blocked most of the force, a small part of the fist force still blasted into Dician's body. Dician screamed in agony. His chest caved in and blood spurted out of his mouth like crazy. A defensive Emperor's spiritual weapon! Lu Ming's heart stirred. This Dician was really rich. He even had a defense-type Emperor Spirit weapon. What Lu Ming had encountered in the past were all attack-type Emperor Spirit weapons. Relatively speaking, defensive Emperor Spirit weapons were more precious than attack-type Emperor Spirit weapons. A defensive Emperor spiritual weapon could save one's life at a critical moment. If Dician did not have this armor, he would have been killed by Lu Ming's punch. How dare you hurt young master! Kill him! Dician was severely injured. His subordinates roared and attacked Lu Ming fiercely. 6 peak LV2 Martial Kings and 2 LV3 Martial Kings attacked at the same time. Oh no! Xie Luan, Xia Jiuyang, and the others were shocked. Die! A battle sword appeared in Lu Ming's hand. It was the Emperor's spiritual weapon, the Dragon Vein Sword, that he had taken from the Flood Dragon Sovereign when they were fighting for the pure spiritual body cultivation technique in the ancient underwater city. Lu Ming had broken through to the Martial King realm and controlled the embryonic form of the realm. He was able to activate the power of an Emperor's spiritual weapon. Moreover, Lu Ming's embryonic form of the realm was the chaotic realm. The chaotic realm could transform into other realms at will. In other words, Lu Ming could use any kind of Emperor spiritual weapon except for space-time and a few other types. Swoosh! The battle sword slashed out, and a peak LV2 Martial King expert was cut in half. He died on the spot. Clang! Then, the battle sword moved sideways and clashed with a LV3 Martial King expert, forcing him to retreat. Let's attack! Swoosh! Xie Luan controlled a demonic saber, a martial Emperor spiritual weapon, and charged at the 2 peak second-layer martial Emperor realm martial artists. At the same time, the old general and Tu Qian also attacked. Both of them controlled Emperor spiritual weapons and surrounded the remaining 2 peak LV2 martial kings. Chapter 1367. Kill them! Kill them all! Dician roared furiously in the distance. It had been too dangerous. Dician felt as if he had just brushed shoulders with the god of death. He was scared and broke out in a cold sweat. He had not expected to be almost killed by a peer on a desolate island. He was furious, and his killing intent was cold. The silver-haired elder appeared behind Dician, but he did not make a move. Let's see who will kill who! Xie Luan and the other 2 blocked the 5 LV2 Martial Royal Realm experts, while Lu Ming attacked the 2 LV3 Martial Royal Realm experts. Clang! Clang! Sword cries shook the sky. A golden battle sword appeared in the hands of the two LV3 martial royal realm experts. They were both royal spiritual weapons. How powerful would a LV3 martial royal realm expert be when controlling a royal spiritual weapon? However, Lu Ming was not afraid at all. He slashed down with the dragon vein sword, which was wrapped in the embryonic form of the chaotic territory. Clang! The two swords collided, forming rings of sword ripples that spread out. The LV3 martial royal realm expert was no match for Lu Ming. His body trembled and he kept retreating. How is this possible? Not far away, Di Xian and the silver-haired elder narrowed their eyes in disbelief. Lu Ming's combat strength was actually able to suppress a LV3 martial royal realm expert. On the ground, the experts of the Dragon League were very excited. Some of them clenched their fists tightly. Lu Ming was too powerful. He had not reached the royal realm, but he could suppress a LV3 martial royal realm expert. There was no LV3 martial royal realm expert in the divine region. 30,000 years ago, Ciel Wan had reached the LV3 martial royal realm at his peak. However, such an expert was suppressed by Lu Ming. Alliance leader, this was the alliance leader of the Dragon League. Lu Ming would not be a match for a LV3 martial royal realm expert in the Battle of the Sacred City. Moreover, the other party had a royal spiritual weapon. However, Lu Ming had reached the sovereign realm, and his combat strength had increased tremendously. He was no longer comparable to the Battle of the Sacred City. Swish! Meanwhile, another third-layer martial dominator realm expert charged toward Lu Ming. However, Lu Ming didn't seem to notice. He raised his dragon vein sword and charged at the person he had forced back. Just as the sword of the person behind Lu Ming was about to reach him, a figure stepped out from between Lu Ming's eyebrows. The second body, Lu Ming's second body. Whoosh! The second body pointed its finger like a sword and slashed out, blocking the opponent's battle sword. During this period of time, Lu Ming's main body was cultivating. Naturally, his second body was not idle either. His second body cultivated wholeheartedly without any distractions, and his speed of improvement was even faster. During the Holy City War, the second body had only condensed one golden spirit lamp, but during this period of time, the second body had condensed a second golden spirit lamp, greatly increasing its combat strength. Whoosh! 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 5 phoenix feather flying swords flew out from the second body's glabella and attacked the other party. The opponent was shocked and could only brandish his sword to block. Lu Ming's main body continued to attack the opponent. The embryonic form of the chaotic domain wrapped around the dragon vein's sword. The power of Lu Ming's sword was unimaginably strong. Clang! The opponent was completely passive and could only brandish his sword to block. When the two swords clashed for the second time, the opponent's body trembled continuously. His face was pale and he kept retreating. Swish! Swish! Lu Ming unleashed a torrential attack, and the dragon vein's sword slashed out continuously. Lu Ming had completely gained the upper hand. Suddenly, 4 sealing gates appeared in the sky, emitting a resplendent light as they moved to seal the other party. At this moment, the opponent was frozen. Although it was only for a moment, it was enough. Prison-suppressing steel! Lu Ming performed the bloodline fusion and transformed into the prison-suppressing steel. Boom! The prison-suppressing steel directly suppressed the opponent. Lu Ming had become a supreme being, comprehended the embryonic form of the chaotic domain, and transformed into the prison-suppressing steel. How powerful was he? Although the opponent desperately broke open the sealed doors and blocked with his sword at the critical moment, his body still trembled violently. Crackling sounds came from his body, and he almost exploded. Blood spurted out of his mouth. Swish! Under the control of Lu Ming's spiritual sense, the dragon vein's sword was as fast as lightning and slashed out. The opponent had just been severely injured by the prison-suppressing steel that Lu Ming had transformed into. How could he dodge? The dragon vein's sword slashed out and a head flew high into the air. The dragon vein's sword twisted again, and the opponent's spiritual deity was also turned into ashes. A third-level martial emperor expert was dead. On the other side, the battle between the second bodies was also coming to an end. The second body lit up an additional golden spirit lamp, and his combat strength had greatly increased compared to the battle in the Holy City. At this time, he took out the myriad formation image and trapped the opponent. Swish! 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 5 phoenix feather flying swords pierced 5 holes in the opponent's body and killed him in one fell swoop. 2 third-level martial emperors were killed just like that. In the Dragon Emperor City, the experts of the Dragon Alliance were shocked and overjoyed. Dicien and the others were in disbelief. Kill! Kill! Lu Ming's main body and second body rushed toward Dicien at the same time. Oh no, young master, retreat! Beside Dicien, the silver-haired elder's expression changed. A golden sword appeared in his hand. He took a step forward and came to the front of Dicien. Dazzling sword she slashed toward Lu Ming violently. There was no doubt that the silver-haired elder's sword was also a spiritual weapon of the emperor level. At the same time, the silver-haired elder's cultivation was even more amazing. He had reached the peak of the third-level martial emperor level. However, facing the joint attack of Lu Ming's main body and second body, the silver-haired elder was still no match for them. After a few moves, the silver-haired elder kept retreating. Go retreat! Dicien also panicked. Lu Ming's strength was beyond his imagination. He was much stronger than what Di had said. Even a third-level martial emperor expert was no match for him. He shouted and turned to run. Clang! Boom! Lu Ming's main body and second body joined forces and exchanged another blow with the silver-haired elder. The silver-haired elder was forced to retreat dozens of miles. Whoosh! The second body rushed toward Dicien. Oh no! The silver-haired elder's expression changed drastically. He ignored the battle and merged with his sword. He turned into a sword light and instantly appeared in front of Dicien. In an instant, he slashed out 108 sword lights in all directions. The spirit fire between the second body's eyebrows jumped. Countless large formations on the million formation illustration shone. Various large formations, attacks, and trapping formations poured toward the silver-haired elder and Dicien. At the same time, the 5 phoenix feather flying swords stabbed at them. Lu Ming's main body also arrived. The silver-haired elder tried his best to protect Dicien, but the situation was critical. Young master, use the void-breaking shuttle! The silver-haired elder shouted. Void-breaking shuttle! Yes, yes, yes! Dicien was scared out of his wits. His face was pale and his body was trembling. After the silver-haired elder's reminder, he nodded repeatedly. His glabella shone, and a spiritual weapon with 2 sharp ends and a thicker middle flew out. As soon as the spiritual weapon appeared, it rapidly expanded. A light curtain enveloped Dicien and the silver-haired elder. Let's go! The silver-haired elder activated his genuine yuan. The void-breaking shuttle shone, and with a shake, it shattered the void and disappeared. Chapter 1368. You want to leave? Boom! The prison-suppressing steel pressed down on the void, and the space within 1,000 miles exploded. However, the void-breaking shuttle had completely disappeared. Another Emperor-level spiritual weapon, and it's an escape type. Lu Ming frowned. It was a pity. His opponent was so rich that he had all kinds of Emperor-level spiritual weapons. First, there were attack types, then there were defense types, and now there were even escape types. Under the control of the silver-haired elder, the void-breaking shuttle was so fast that it disappeared in an instant. It was much faster than tearing the void. Dicien had escaped, and Lu Ming turned his eyes in another direction. Di, where are you going? Lu Ming transformed back into his human form. There was a cold smile at the corners of his lips. At this time, Di was desperately escaping. Di's face was full of horror and disbelief. Only a few months had passed, and Lu Ming's combat strength had soared again. Without the help of the divine nine-dragon cauldron, he had killed a LV3 martial royal realm expert. How could it be? How could it be? Dee roared in his heart. He was extremely unwilling, and at the same time, he was desperately escaping. Buzz! Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of him. Lu Ming! Dee's pupils contracted sharply. The one who appeared in front of Dee was Lu Ming's second body. Dee, you can't burn your spiritual body this time. Do you think you can still escape? Lu Ming's voice sounded behind Dee. Behind him was the main body. Kill! Dee was very decisive and attacked directly. However, his cultivation had regressed to the peak of LV1 martial royal realm, and his 10,000 veins spiritual body had been destroyed. His combat strength was worlds apart from Lu Ming's. The second body waved his hand, and the 10,000 formation image appeared, trapping Dee in it. Dee, I'll kill you later! Lu Ming sneered and stepped out toward the battlefield where Xiaowan and the others were fighting. The 5 experts at the peak of LV2 martial royal realm were scared out of their wits. They wanted to escape, but they were entangled by Xiaowan and the others. Whoosh! 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 With the dragon vein sword in his hand, Lu Ming slashed out 5 times in a row, killing 5 experts at the peak of LV2 martial royal realm. Everyone in the Dragon Emperor city was stunned. They stared blankly at Lu Ming. 5 peak second layer martial royal realm experts had killed 5 of them with 1 strike each. This kind of visual effect, this kind of impact, was really too strong. In the Divine Wilderness continent, the peak of the second layer of the Martial King realm would be considered an expert who stood at the peak. However, in the hands of Lu Ming, he was as weak as a chicken. Alliance Master is invincible! The Alliance Master is unparalleled! All of a sudden, a shocking roar broke out in the Dragon Emperor city. Countless people were so excited that their faces turned red as they roared madly. At this moment, Lu Ming's figure was irreplaceable in their hearts. He was indomitable and invincible. The whistling sound came wave after wave. Lu Ming's prestige reached its peak. Lu Ming raised his hand and pressed down in the air. Dragon Emperor City quieted down at once. Whoosh! Lu Ming moved and appeared in front of Dee. Lu Ming, do you know who we are? Do you know who young Master Di Xian is? Let me tell you, we are from Yuanlu, the Di clan of Yuanlu. If you dare to kill the people of Di clan, you are dead. Young Master Di Xian will not let you go. The entire Divine Wilderness continent will be buried with you. Dee roared. Yuanlu sect? Di clan? Lu Ming frowned. He had already guessed that Di Xian, and the others had an extraordinary background. However, he had not expected them to be from Yuanlu sect. Xiaowan, the old general, and the others' pupils shrank as they gasped. Yuanlu sect Di was actually from Yuanlu. That was Yuanlu. It was not something that the Divine Wilderness continent or the Divine Ruins continent could compare with. Legend had it that Yuanlu sect was filled with experts and experts. There were countless existences that had surpassed the martial royal realm. Such experts could destroy the Divine Wilderness continent with a snap of their fingers. Everyone who had heard about Yuanlu sect looked worried. When Dee saw this, he sneered and said, Lu Ming, you'd better let me go. Perhaps I can help you deal with them. Ha ha ha, what a joke! Before Dee could finish his words, Lu Ming laughed loudly and interrupted him. Dee, you used to be a mighty lord. Now you are using this to scare me in order to survive. How pitiful and sad! Lu Ming sneered. Lu Ming, you! Dee was furious. Dee, let me tell you, you will die today. And that Di Xian, if he stops now, it will be fine. However, if he is stubborn, I will destroy the Di clan of Yuanlu. Lu Ming shouted. His voice reverberated throughout the Imperial Dragon City. The Di clan of Yuanlu, I will destroy them. What kind of heroic spirit was this? How confident was that? Dee was stunned. Then, he laughed crazily. Lu Ming, you want to destroy the Di clan? You are too short-sighted. You are just a frog at the bottom of a well. Lu Ming, do you know how many experts there are in Yuanlu? Emperors are ants. Do you know how strong the D clan is? How dare you claim that you have destroyed the D clan? If your words spread to Yuan Lu sect, many people will laugh their heads off. D laughed as if he did not care about life and death. So what if they are strong? Back then, I came from a small country in Tianxian domain in eastern wasteland. Back then, D Tian Divine Palace was also a giant. You, D, were also high and mighty. But what about now? Lu Ming said calmly. He was full of confidence. D shut his mouth. Roar! The 9 dragons bloodline appeared above Lu Ming's head. D, haven't you always wanted the 9 dragons blood essence? Today, I will kill you with the 9 dragons bloodline. Then, the 9 dragons bloodline opened its mouth and engulfed D with its devouring power. Ever since the 9 dragons bloodline had merged with the 9 drops of 9 dragons blood essence, its devouring power had increased many times. It was shockingly strong. Enveloped by the devouring power, Di's life essence, blood essence, heart blood, and other things were rapidly being devoured by the 9 dragons. Even though D was an overlord with a strong mind and was prepared to be killed, in such a situation, he still roared in fear and struggled with all his might. But in the 10,000 formation image, struggling was futile. After a while, Di's life essence was completely devoured, and he turned into a dried corpse. In Dragon Emperor City, countless people looked at the sky with complicated expressions. Di was an overlord of a generation. He had planned for 10,000 years and had almost unified the divine wilderness continent. If it were not for the appearance of a rare genius like Lu Ming, Di would have succeeded and unified the divine wilderness. Di could be called an overlord of a generation. But in the end, he died in the hands of Lu Ming. Let the alliance establishment ceremony continue. Lu Ming turned around, stepped down, and landed in the Dragon Emperor City. His voice spread throughout the city. The alliance leader is invincible. Their shouts resounded through the sky. After this battle, Lu Ming's prestige reached its peak. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.